Perfect. Thanks very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Great to see a full house tonight. Well, semi-full anyways. I'd like to call the regular council meeting for August 28th to order. Firstly, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking people of the Esquimalt and Songhees nations who have stewarded these lands throughout the generations. First item is approval of agenda. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the near-term agenda and today's agenda of the regular council meeting be adopted as presented? Okay. Did you get that? Okay. Thank you very much. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? It's unanimous. Motion carried. Okay, just mayor's message, very short one. I hope everyone had a relaxing and fun summer, enjoyable summer. We're heading into a very busy schedule this fall, believe me. And so the next few months, we're going to be trying to finalize our strategic priorities for our term as the council. Adoption and receipt of the minutes. May I please have a mover and seconder for the adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting held on July 10th? Olson and Grove. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, we turn it over to public participation. We had 2 written submissions that were received after the cutoff time, but they will be appended to the agenda for tomorrow. And at this point in time, I'd love to give the opportunity to the public to come up and speak. You have a 2-minute time limit. There's a couple of folks in the public that want to speak to the item itself, so we'll wait for the item, and I'll try to remember you. Just jog me and slap me in the head there if I forget about you. So at this point in time, I'd like to remind everyone that there is one comments pertaining to bylaw 1913 CD3 33 2350 Soup Road are prohibited as it has been subject to a public hearing. At that point in time, I'll invite anyone from the public to come up and talk to council. Thank you. You just identify yourself and where you live, that'd be great.
Judy Knoll, 274 Belmont Road. Yeah, I'm very pleased to read the Comprehensive Climate Planning Foundation report. I recently started a Gardening for Wildlife group at the Fuca Senior Center, and our goal is to convert our yards into a more natural environment. This group will support many of the objectives listed in this report, including reducing GHG emissions, increasing resiliency to extreme weather, protecting biodiversity, increasing personal well-being, and many other co-benefits outlined here. So I look forward to council support and implementation of these measures. And this report also promises to empower and support community endeavors. So I'm looking forward to that engagement as well. I also have a note from the Citizens Environment Network in Colwood, and we are pleased to see the Climate Planning Foundation report on the agenda this evening and wish to fully support endorsement by council. We are pleased to see that the plan identifies actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Colwood, switch to climate-friendly energy use, increase resiliency through climate adaptation measures, and maximize co-benefits of climate action. We quote report, climate change is an urgent threat to human well-being and the health of the planet, and there is a rapidly closing window of opportunity to secure a livable and sustainable future for all. We encourage Colwood to endorse this plan and to move with speed on the implementation of the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker. Anybody else wish to speak? Please come on up, sir.
Oh, here,
Yeah, got it.
yeah, Ron Shields, 859 Walter Crescent. I'm speaking about the development that's going in right by my house. There's a couple concerns that I have. There are tremendous amount of wildlife right in that little area, which, if you bear with me here, I'm a little slow on this. On a regular day, I have about, I would say average out about 18 to 20 pigeons that come. Scared the hell out of me today when they all took off at the same time. But and also have 4 rabbits, 2 I can pet. I've got 2 squirrels that I feed out of my hand, and a deer that visits me every day. And the pigeons has been brought to my attention that they are protected species, and where they spend most of their time is in the real big trees that are right behind me and up the house. And which I don't know where they would go with just development going in there. And I have 1 or 2 trees that they're on my property, but I don't have enough room for a driveway. And apparently the developer does not want to have a double driveway, or, for both of us to use. So that's another problem I have, but I think that's about it. Thank you kindly.
Thanks very much, sir. Next person.
Good evening. My name is Christine Chamberlain. I'm from Ridley Drive, and I wanted to ask council if you are looking at installing septic or sewer down in our area, Ridley Drive, Hulser, off Wishart, and is that on the agenda?
No, not tonight. It isn't.
Pardon?
No, it's not. It's not on the agenda tonight. But
No, but
we,
like
within, within the next 60 days, I believe, I believe, Mr. Earl, that we're going to have the sewage plan for the city of Colwood, the draft anyways out. If you could just remind me.
Thank you, Mayor Kobayashi. We do have a letter from Christine Chamberlain, 7.5 on the agenda this evening that's speaking to sewer on Ridley Drive as well. The sewer master plan, as you've described, will be coming back to council. I believe it's ready as early as the next council meeting, either the 11th or the 25th of September. That plan describes the different phasing approaches council could use to sewer. Ridley is one of those areas on that plan, and so understanding where Ridley fits in that phasing order, light will be shed on that at that meeting.
Is that good? Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
You can move the mic if you, there you go.
Thanks, that's a bit better. My name is Eric Bjornson, and my address is 860 Walter Crescent. I live actually across the street from Ron. It's a good friend of mine. And we just have the concerns of the development that's going in for 783 Walter Crescent DVP 23004. I feel that in providing Mr. Ross Casey and his team to decrease the minimum width of an access strip for his proposal will not be on the community's best interest. Triangle Mountain, on that side of Triangle Mountain, is large lots, similar to Broadmead, similar to areas of forestry where we've got, like Ron had said, there is actually a flock of bandtail pigeons on the property. They are actually blue listed species that are protected under the British Columbia Wildlife Act and under the Canadian Species Act. It's not like we don't disagree with development. We want to make sure that the community can prosper, but I feel like with Ross trying to put in a variance for this new 3 lots, it's a little excessive. That's pretty much where myself, Robin Devine, she lives on the other lot. She couldn't be here today. We just feel like it's a bit pressed. And what I don't understand this is my first time ever dealing with anything like this. If you allow the variance to go through and you know that there's, for example, wildlife or protected species, or it's a high risk build in terms of mitigating house damage, taking out the amount of rock material. That's a huge catch basin for water, especially at the top of the mountain. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Chris Millington and I live at 553 Delora Drive. And I'm here to fully support Mr. Briggs' application to extend Marianne Crescent. The main issue is one of just common sense. The road leading into the future 6-story condo project off of Delora Drive is just 1.5 lanes wide and is a private road. It is extremely windy and narrow. The sheer number of heavy construction vehicles having to negotiate this road is dangerous and damaging to the existing road infrastructure. The same will still apply when the condo building is completed. There will be a large number of personal vehicles traveling down this lane. At the present time, there is a dirt road extended from Marianne Crescent that industrial trucks have been using to get to the condo project worksite. It is straighter, wider, safer, and offers more direct access. The truck drivers already know this, and that's why they're using the perfect route. As Mr. Briggs, as he will state in his petition, has stated, when the future site of some 68 single homes at the end of Marianne Crescent was approved many years ago, the 48 condo unit project at the end of Delora Drive was not even foreseen at that time. Who was to know that this land would be purchased and developed? The extension of Marianne into the 68 single homes will have direct access to the future 6-story condo project. This route is safer, offers more direct access. I hope council approves this common sense application. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next speaker. Is there anybody, oops. Oh. Ms. Davis.
Thank you. I think it's on. Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Laura Davis, President of Arts and Culture Colwood Society. And do you need my address as well? Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for your genuine support for the arts in this first year as elected officials. You've doubled the amount of support to arts and culture programming in your community via the grant and aid process this year. This shows commitment to your citizens and creating a healthy place to live. I've worked as a volunteer in a leadership role for arts and culture for over 10 years on the West Shore. Tonight, I'm here representing Arts and Culture Colwood Society, and we're addressing 7.1 on the agenda. We would like to recommend that this decision be put off until such time that the city is well underway in the development of its own art policy. We see more value in having a counselor as a liaison for a Colwood advisory or group that would address arts and culture initiatives and programming in Colwood. This would then be more focused in our current arts and culture needs for Colwood and the future. It would address arts and culture matters that relate to regional initiatives. I would just ask that you would focus on our own arts and culture identity before taking on regional initiatives. Thank you.
Next speaker. Is there anyone that is coming in electronically? Do you know offhand? No, okay. Okay, so we'll call up you two gentlemen when your item comes up. Okay, thank you very much. So moving on, it's into delegations, and I'd like to welcome the Fuca Performing Arts Center Society for this evening's meeting. Judith Cullington, the president of the society. It's all over to you. You've got 10 minutes.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome back. It's lovely to see all your smiling faces. Good evening. My name is Judith Cullington, president of the Fuca Performing Arts Center Society. And with me are board members David Stocks and Dorothy York. So I'm delighted to have everybody with us. What I want to do is just provide you with a brief update on progress and then provide you with a request at the end. So, as you know, ACTS, as we call ourselves, we're a registered charity. Our vision is very simple and it's vital to the West Shore. We want to see the creation of a community-oriented arts and culture center that serves the West Shore and beyond. So it's not my intention to go through this timeline in detail, simply to point out that this is an idea that's been around since the early 2000s, when the CRD identified the growing West Shore that should have its own performance space. There have been numerous studies over the year that have identified the need for this center. Most recently, the CRD Stage 1 report that identified lack of performance space in the West Shore, something that surprises none of us, lack of accessible performance space region-wide, and lack of theatres in the 300 to 500 seat range. But we're working to build something much more than just a theatre. So I want you to imagine a place that is humming with activity. It provides spaces for people of all ages to take drama classes or learn to play an instrument or do fine arts or pottery. It provides affordable space for local groups to put on performances. There are ever-changing displays from local and regional artists in the gallery. People come to hang out at the cafe, and it's a space where the community comes together to meet, to share ideas, to co-create. It is the heart of the community. So thank you, Colwood. With your support, we've supported an updated feasibility study last year that proposed a variety of different spaces. So things like 350-seat theatre with a large lobby, exhibition space, multi-purpose rehearsal space, smaller rooms for teaching, for classes, dance floors with sprung floors, classroom spaces, dedicated pottery studios, small space for recording, gathering spaces, cafe, again, a kind of a hub that mixes a lot of different needs. We feel it's a well-balanced approach. It fits multiple community needs. It builds on a lot of interviews that took place to make this happen. It will create a vibrant and happening place where people want to come and hang out. The approach is not cast in stone, but it is a strong starting point. I want to come back to this last point, that we want to include accessible and inclusive spaces and programs. I love this image. It's all about ability. And so it's very important to us to make sure that the proposed spaces are accessible both for artists and performers with physical challenges, mental challenges, that they are welcoming and inclusive spaces for people who are gender diverse, neurodiverse, full myriad of cultural backgrounds. So with support from the West Shore Arts Council and funding from the BC Arts Council, the West Shore municipalities and the casino, we are currently undertaking a study to learn more about how to make this space truly excellent for all. So together with the feasibility study, we really feel this gives us a solid foundation for understanding what needs to be built. We know that this is something that the community wants. Last year we talked to, excuse me, literally hundreds of people, all of who said, this is a great idea. We need this in our community. We'd love to have it closer to home. We've also heard time and time again from the arts groups who want this space. This particular image was taken from a fundraiser we did in 2019 that was held in a church because there was no other suitable performance spaces. and we hear similar stories throughout. We know the arts is good for our minds. They make us feel good. They're essential for children's development. So our minds active as we age, adds joy to our lives. And there is extensive research that speaks to the value of art therapy for our mental health and well-being. We also know that arts are good for the local economy. This image comes from a study that was done in 2021 by the Digital Innovation Group looking at, Vancouver Island as a whole. One of the things that stood out for me is that the arts create nearly $1 billion of direct economic outputs every year. And just for comparison, the cruise ship industry creates about 124 million. 1 billion, 124 million. So clearly an important piece of our local economy. So what are we going to build and how are we going to pay for it? So our consultant's report identified that the capital costs would be in the order of 40 million. That does not include land, does not include parking. Our intention is that this is funded through federal and provincial grants and a significant fundraising campaign to raise the remainder through private contributions. So let me repeat, it is not our expectation that municipalities will be contributing significant amounts to the capital costs. We also looked at the operating cost, and of course it will be set up so that the financial model is self-sustaining, providing substantial revenues as much as possible. But like every other facility of its kind, there is expected to be an operating shortfall. That would be funded, we hope, through the 5 West Shore municipalities. The good news is that if that is shared with all the West Shore municipalities, it works out to about $7 a person, which I hope you all agree, is a heck of a bargain. So just to wrap up this section, we have an identified need for this centre. We know it'll bring numerous benefits to the West Shore. We know what kinds of spaces we need. Location is yet to be determined. So how do we move this forward next? We're working on 3 fronts this year. One is building partnerships who might share the space with us. Land is too valuable. There are too many community needs for us to build this as a standalone arts and culture centre. We need to do this in collaboration with others who are also looking for space. Just as one example, the Village Initiative I know has spoken to you, and we're in good communication with them about how some of their needs might be met through a shared space. We're working, of course, on fundraising, but a very clear need is for an intermunicipal committee to move this forward. I'm going to pause for a minute and remind Councillor Jansen that he's promoted several times that this needs to be not a Colwood initiative, but a West Shore-wide initiative. So I'm here, Councillor, to say we're moving forward on that front. So we are creating an intermunicipal committee with 1 person designated from each of the West Shore municipalities. Souk and the Juan electoral area will be invited should they wish to join. So 3 of the 5 councils have already designated their representative. Langford has passed a motion that they're going to be designating their individual in September. And I'm very much hoping that, obviously Colwood needs to be at the table as well. So I'm very much hoping that you will appoint your member tonight. The role of this group, as you can see from the draft terms of reference, is confirming the proposed spaces, the financial model, discussing location, really moving us towards a shovel-ready project. So my request for you today is for Colwood to designate one of the council members as your representative on this committee. Note that this is not a commitment, financial or otherwise, at this time. This is a conversation. Part of the role of that representative would be bringing back to council information, or all of the council's information that needs approval. It is also not intended to be onerous. We know you guys are all really busy, but it is an essential step to moving this project forward. I did hear the request from Arts and Culture Colwood to put a delay, to wait until you've done your arts strategic work. Very much looking forward to that happening. But I think the 2 can happen in parallel. I don't think they need to be separate. I think the 2 will inform each other. And again, a reminder that we are a West Shore-wide group, whereas the Arts and Culture Colwood, quite rightly, is focused on just Colwood. So happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Judith. Well, what I'll do is I'll just roll into item 7, which is your request for a Colwood representative. And I'll just open it to the floor to council for questions and comments. I'll start off with one. So I noticed, some of the numbers, it's pretty hard to determine numbers. You said $7 per person per year. So I'm assuming now that you have a business plan and a financial model where you've come up with that number.
Yeah, that's in
Would assume.
I wouldn't put it quite as strongly as that, but that's in the feasibility study that they did. They went through the kind of the space allocations, looked at the capital cost of the building, looked at a model operating cost. So the annual deficit was in the order of 400,000 a year.
Okay.
So
So
that's where that number comes from.
okay, so it is just, it's a rough order of magnitude number at this point in time then.
And it's a high level estimate because until we know exactly what we're building,
Right.
that's all it can be.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm having difficulty trying to
Absolutely,
figure
yeah,
out
yeah.
how you came up with that.
I'd love
number.
to give you definitive numbers, Mr. Mayor. We're not quite there
Yeah.
yet.
So, I don't think, I think I can speak on behalf of the entire council. I don't think there's one person on council that doesn't support having a performing arts center here in the West Shore someplace. I honestly believe that. And the only problems that I think everyone was struggling with a little bit right now was the terms of reference that were written, because you've got them. What's the word I want to use? I'll use your wording. Councillor Day, but it's almost like working bees, like, and I believe in that word advisory, and there should be an advisory so we know what's going on, and everything can be passed off to council. I could see that role, that functioning happening, and advising, where applicable. But when some of the terms that you used in the terms of reference were building the business model, the financial models, I'm going, oh, that's not what the councillors, the government should be doing. So that's where I was going, oh, I don't know if I like this part of it. So that there was some issues with the terms of reference, and I don't think I got anyone to volunteer to do this because of those requirements in the terms of reference.
Yeah.
So I think that needs to be absolutely clarified, because all of a sudden this is because everyone's we all have certain bandwidths here, and now with all the citizen committees that we have, and everyone has got a job on it, and even Councillor Day is going to have the biggest one pretty soon here. And so that's the issue that we have. I think this is why everyone was reluctant here. So it's not that we're not for the idea of this. It's a really solid idea, and hoping to see money being raised, and that you got that philanthropist involved. And I guess there's a lot of questions that we have on this. So I'm just speaking in general right now off the top of my head here, but I was just trying to get a feel for where everybody was. I mean, there's, like I said, there's not one person here that doesn't support it at all. It's just how we're going to get there is what's not clear right now. And we've never had that sort of presentation. This is what we have to do here. Here are the milestones that we want to hit. This is how you're involved in this. So, and it wasn't clear from your terms of reference. So I just thought I'd start off with the comments, and I'll certainly open it up. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Ms. Cullington, for reminding me of my words. I like the idea and the concept. Where I get a little murky, and maybe you can help me out here, is so if a council member is assigned from whatever community, where does that fit with the board? Is this a decision-making person? Are they non-voting, or where do they fit in? Because you're raising private funds, and we deal strictly with public funds, so it's a little bit of confusion on my part. But
Maybe I can work my way a little bit through it and also respond to some of the mayor's concerns. So the terms of reference are draft. They were initial draft prepared actually by a couple of the members and myself, and I totally hear this kind of, we need to get the language right around this. It's an advisory body. And no, the expectation is not that your work could be. So very happy to kind of go back and look at the language and make that absolutely clear. The reason that we need to bring all the groups together is if we're going to make this a West Shore facility, and the recommendation in that report, as it has been consistently since the Shiner days, is that this is a municipally owned, a non-profit operated organization. So as the non-profit, there's only so far that we can take it without fully engaging all of the municipalities. The way forward on that is for us to bring representatives from each of the 5 municipalities together to have that conversation, to say, how do we move this forward? Because otherwise we're left with our wheels spinning, and we can't apply for funding because we don't have a project with a location. So, you know, we're limited in kind of how we can move forward. So until we can have that 5-way conversation.
So, and I appreciate that, but I do know from past presentations that you did connect with members of the development community. And I mean, I see, you know, where some issues might arise, where a councillor is sitting here and negotiating on behalf of the, and then the next week is over here and considering some kind of development. Do you see an issue with that at all, or any kind of conflict?
At this time, no, because we are in no active conversations with any developers. We're kind of pulling it back and we're saying, okay, West Shore, where do you want this to be located? What is the funding model that you want? What is the facility that you want to build? Who are the partners that you want us to be building with us with? Then we could move forward and look at finding the right developer. And yes, I totally understand that at that point in time, maybe the role of the advisory committee is to step back because it's a different role. Does that help any?
Well, it doesn't in the sense that I think I respect the fact that this is a draft, and I just wonder if some of those questions might be answered through some language in the terms of reference on exactly what the role is, whether it's voting, non-voting, advisory only, and whether, you know, the board is responsible for fundraising and the committee is responsible for this. That kind of clarity before I think someone from council would want to get involved.
And I would be very happy to, you know, work with all of the members of the advisory group to get that kind of clarification. Because no, it's not the expectation of our group that these, you know, these members would be responsible for fundraising or the business development. That's on our backs.
Thank you. And I do, you know, I do see that some of our neighbors are actively involved, and that's great. So I'm sure there's a path forward for us as a group as well.
Oh.
Thank you, Judith.
Thank you very much. Councillor Olson.
Hi, Judith. Thank you for the presentation. This type of work certainly speaks to me. But I think where I'm having a hard time is until such time that there's some funding secured. I think personally, I have a hard time supporting appointing somebody to the committee until there's something a little bit more tangible to move forward. Can you tell me if you've had any opportunity, like, is there anybody that you're currently speaking with as far as funding for this project?
We have been limited in our ability to go after funding because we do not have a shovel-ready project. It's a chicken and egg.
Yeah.
Until we can get that or something that is well described, we can't. I mean, I've watched, for example, numerous federal and provincial grant opportunities walk past the door, and we can't apply for them because we don't have that shovel-ready project. This committee is an essential step to move us there. And I should say, you know, the committee is going forward. I just want to make sure Colwood is also at the table. I don't want to kind of, you know, it would create a very big hole not to have Colwood at the table.
Right.
So.
Thank you.
Councillor Grove.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Judith. Here's some of the concerns here, and I've, up until this meeting tonight, I let everybody know that I didn't see how I could go forward with the task of being a part of this group. Of course, I'm familiar with PACs and the pursuit of pretty much each one of these items. We've thrashed through over the years. I was on the board for a couple, friend of the board for a year before that. So I'm somewhat familiar with this wording and what you're looking for and your chicken egg situation. I think that now in reflection at this meeting that Colwood would benefit from having ears on this. I remember as a board member that it was very frustrating not to have any communication with other municipalities, in particular Langford. There's been lots of change, and I think maybe there's something there. And if the task of the citizen or the council rep is to have ears on in the conversation and an opportunity to then simply communicate back what's going to help alleviate perhaps some of the rumor mills type things that go on when there's holes within and in this era of collaboration, and knowing some of the members on the other municipal councils, I would be willing to put forward my name for representative, but I cannot see through to being involved on levels, certain levels of what you have in the terms of reference here, simply because it's not my task, but it has been referenced in terms of, I'm not sure what council thinks of that, but I would offer myself to that committee. And that is a bit of a change of heart here because I really didn't feel like I could for various reasons. I don't need to go into it. So anyway, I tried to do that. I think you did also just answer the one question I'd written down here about the committee will move forward whether Colwood is involved or not. Presumably that's makes sense. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, so there it is. I don't know where we go from there.
Thanks so much, Councillor Grove. I'll remember that. So you're volunteering. You know, I don't think, like I said, Judith, I think that, you know, we want to be part of this, but it's clear that we'd like a better terms of reference, that's for sure. So Councillor Grove knows exactly what we're going to hold them accountable for. So if that could be done, you know, we would endorse this. I'm sure if you brought it back, we would endorse it. But, you know, if you want to be involved with that, David, that'd be great. Thanks. Oh, Councillor Day.
Thank you. I appreciate this is a very, very difficult task. All of the many chicken and egg situations that we both have dealt with over the years have been that way. I just really feel strongly that Colwood as a council needs to develop our vision for supporting the arts before we get diverted into regional conversations. So I'm hoping that we can be inspired by your presentation to get on with that work. And then I'm certainly personally comfortable with having eyes and ears participating to hear what's going on. But I really think at the same time, probably no real progress can be made until we do that, because we just need to sort out our strategic thinking on the arts.
Thanks so much, Councillor Day. Any other? So Judith, I guess if you can work with us on the terms of reference and get a clarification, then you know get the thumbs up from Councillor Grove, then you know we can bring it back and certainly assign you formally, Councillor Grove. Does that sound okay?
Thank you. So yes, I will follow up with Councillor Grove and we'll bring back an adjusted terms of reference to your next meeting.
Okay, super. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you. The next item, 7.2, it's a letter from the Mayor of Victoria, Marianne Alto. It's regarding the endorsement of the Vancouver Island Housing Leadership Network's call for action. And before I open it up for discussion, I do have a suggestion on what I think we should do with this. I mean, it's very light in details. It's a one-page letter and they want me to endorse it. And it's so hard to endorse something when you don't understand what you're committing to. So what I was going to suggest is that we forward this letter to staff because I need them to consider what this means to us. What's the workload? What's the financial impact of the 6 calls for action? And if you could report it back to council, that was going to be my recommendation, but I'll certainly open up the floor for anyone in council to make comments or a motion. Councillor Jensen.
I'm happy to second your motion, your worship. Thank you.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. Housing is such a it's such a difficult issue. I really feel for people who are in need of assistance in finding housing, people whom I've talked to who've never needed help before, have had to really scramble. Members of our military services, active military personnel who've had a stable rental location for years, well, as long as the years are between different appointments that they have, but only to be faced with the issues that there are in our region and all of BC and pretty much all of Canada, and seems like the whole world right now, to find affordable, reasonable accommodation that meets your family's needs. But these are very broad-based goals, and the regional housing may not align well with some of the realities of life. It does make a difference where your kids are in school. It does make a difference where you work, how that impacts your schedule. So I cautiously endorse anything that helps to put more emphasis on helping people find their way through a very complicated and tangled system. But at the same time, I don't want to add to the burden, either for staff of trying to figure it out for people, because it is a very complicated system, or trying to bridge the gaps between the many different service providers. So I would really, as a first step, just like to see collaboration on even a directory for where do you go? Because some of the people that I've spoken to who have really had to wonder, do I register my kids for kindergarten, or do I try to hurry up and get to that place where I'm hoping I can get an apartment? So anything that's helpful, I think has to be carefully looked at to ensure that it's sustainable. Thanks.
Thank you very much. You went offline, Councillor Grove. You still want on? Okay. Councillor Grove. Whoops, Councillor Grove.
Push the button. Yeah, no, I was going to reiterate that I would support your motion because this is too vague for me to know for sure. Vancouver Island Housing Leadership Network. I'd like to know more about everything that's on this. We do already a significant number of these actions, it seems to me. So
thank you very much. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly concur with the recommendation to have staff review. I think certainly there's some room in a municipality to examine some of our processes in terms of how we view affordable or social housing. I do sort of want it on the record, though, that this is again, a little bit of the download coming from higher levels of government. 10% of our taxes go to municipal governments, 90% to the feds in the province. And the federal government, contrary to our Prime Minister's recent statement, was responsible for affordable housing and social housing for many, many years until consecutive governments, both sides of the political spectrum, absented themselves from that market. So we've had a 30-year deficit now in building those. That's why you see these older co-ops and things like that out there. And ultimately, the pressure, particularly locally coming from the province, is all on the municipalities to do something about it. So while I'm happy to endorse this going to staff and review it, I don't want that to get or to be assumed that it's just a municipality acknowledging that the issue lies solely with us. I'd like to see the higher levels of government come back to the table and fulfill their obligation to the residents, not only of this region, but the country. So I just wanted that on the record that this is not solely a municipal issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Marcy, did you get my motion then? I was making a motion, but I wasn't making a motion.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So it was that this item be forwarded to staff for consideration, including financial implications, and report back to council.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. Okay, seeing no other comments, I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Okay, that's unanimous. Motion carried. The next item, 7.3, Allison McMillan, Municipal Liaison Proposal Manager. And the letter was regarding menstrual equity pilot project. I believe it was in our package. Turn it over to Councillor Jensen.
I'll move receipt to 7.3, Your Worship.
We have a seconder, Councillor Grove. Any discussion? Okay, call the question. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Motion carried. Okay, 7.4, Mr. Briggs and Mr. Fishbach. I'll give you your public speaking time. I understand you needed 5 minutes. Yeah, is council all okay with the 5 minutes? Okay.
Good evening, members of council. My name is Brent Fishbach and this is John Briggs. John is really the reason why we're here. He spoke to all homeowners and gathered the signatures for our petition. And basically I'm just a spokesperson. We stand before you today as concerned homeowners, representing the collective voices of residents on Delora Drive. Chris earlier, he made a number of points in the public public participation portion of the meeting. And it's quite evident in anybody that I've talked to or John's talked to that residents on Delora Drive are very passionate about this issue. Enclosed with your meeting materials, there was a petition signed by numerous ratepayers, 55 in total, who share a common vision for our neighborhood's future. This petition urges the Colwood City Council and Planning Department to deliberate on the proposed extension of Marianne Crescent by approximately 50 meters, so it's a relatively short distance, to establish a connection between the upcoming subdivision developed by Turnberry Developments, that's property VIP 75627, and the adjacent condo development is currently being undertaken by BC Alto. So I'd like to highlight several points to support the importance of the proposed extension to Marianne. Point number one, it provides a shorter route and it provides an alternate route. The modest extension facilitates a more direct connection to Veterans Memorial Parkway for future condo residents and existing townhouse residents. It alleviates traffic congestion in our neighborhood by offering an alternate route instead of just having the one option of funneling all traffic through onto Delora Drive. The alternate route also trims approximately 1 kilometer for each round trip per car. Which brings me to my next point. Point number two, there's less environmental impact with this option. This option creates a shorter route and demonstrates responsible urban development towards an environmentally conscious future. It saves each vehicle approximately one kilometer per round trip, and it minimizes stops and starts associated with 2 stop signs. So it takes 2 stop signs out of the picture. I believe this aligns with the city's climate action plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Colwood. And in fact, this plan is being put forward for endorsement by the council later in the agenda. My third point, it provides, the shorter route provides additional emergency access. Of course, safety is paramount concern for us all. The extension offers an alternate emergency access route crucial during instances like fire emergencies. The wider route would provide improved access to the future 6-story condo building, offering a more suitable route than the narrower private strata lane for emergency vehicles such as large fire ladder trucks. The site plan for the Turnberry development refers to a temporary emergency access road on lot 36. But by permanently extending Marianne Crescent through to the BC Alto condo development, it may eliminate the need for that temporary access road. We can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Point number 4, it enables efficient and safer construction vehicle access. So the extension presents a direct trouble-free route for heavy construction vehicles to reach the condo building site from Veterans Memorial Parkway, rather than having to come up Delora. The existing narrow strata lane combined with the sharp turn off Delora Drive has already proven inadequate during site excavation, leading to damages of the lane and sidewalks from construction vehicles. So right now we have damaged sidewalks and and the roadway starting to show cracks. So we asked the developer, will you please do the necessary repairs to remedy those? And he doesn't want to do them until the condo is done, naturally. So I guess if those construction vehicles continue to use Delora Drive, then we'll just see more and more damage as construction progresses. So these vehicles, due to their size, occupy a large portion of the narrow strata lane. This also poses safety concerns, given that the lane is narrow and has blind corners with lanes branching off the main road. Also, the strata lane is a shared space where people walk and cycle. The extension facilitates smoother construction operations, is safer for the community, and mitigates the environmental impact of construction vehicles, as I discussed previously. And point number 5, we're asking for a re-examination of the development plans. The site plan for the Turnberry development subdivision was approved by City Council a decade ago. No construction has taken place since then, and the site has been dormant. More recently, the adjacent condo development undertaken by BC Alto was approved, and we're looking for a reevaluation of both projects regarding the inclusion of a road connection that would link the 2 developments. We think that BC Alta had proposed a road previously, and we don't think, and we don't know what happened to that proposal. John, I believe you had a few points you wanted to make.
That's your time, actually.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
We're at time.
Oh,
Could we have 1 more minute?
Okay, go ahead. 1 more minute.
Thank you.
Okay. This 48 people that are going to be moving into the condo development, I'm sure if you discussed it with them, they want the most direct route to Costco.
Okay.
That's straight down Marianne. Where am I going here? I did all the footwork on this, and I got 55 ratepayers to cancel, to sign the sheet and 55 people can't be wrong. I got nothing but thank yous for doing the job. It was a pleasure to do it when you're not getting turned away at the door. 100% signed the petition. We'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time.
Just in closing, I have a couple more comments. We're not just asking for a roadway extension. We're advocating for a more accessible, environmentally conscious and safety enhanced neighborhood for what is a growing community here in Colwood. We ask members of City Council to consider our petition and recognize the genuine concerns of our neighborhood. And so we'd like everybody to work together to choose the shortest route to a better future.
Thank you very much. Good cliche there.
Did you have any questions? Or?
Yes, I'm just going to open the floor for the discussion here. Thank you.
You better not.
Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I do appreciate the efforts of our residents in doing a little bit of legwork, canvassing the neighborhood, bringing it forward, educating us. And I will be happy to speak on their behalf. And I do live adjacent to this neighborhood, full disclosure. And in fact, people have come knocking on my door, but they didn't ask for any money, so it was okay. But the reality is there is a lot going on in that area when you think about it. In isolation, you know, there's bits and pieces, but when you think about it, we have the end of Delora proposed to go through down to the, I believe, Bunker Winthrop area. One or the other, I mix them up. We have the, of course, the Guru Nanak Lane is built out now, and then the condos that are that they speak of that are at the top of Guru Nanak that are going to kick off. The land is cleared, let alone the BC Alta development adjacent to the Parkway, which is immediately adjacent to this property, plus the development at the very top of Marianne, the gravel pit. So when you sauce all that in the mix, there's a lot going on there. And I don't believe the roads have really been looked at for many years. And so is there a better way to make connections into and out of the neighborhood? I haven't heard anyone say, you know, don't build these homes. Is there a better way for us to move people? And I think it behooves us to examine that. And I would like to frame a motion that would speak to our staff members reporting out to us that they've examined the roads in that area and provide us with some feedback, because I do believe some of the plans are quite dated. So that's my 2 cents. That is a motion I would like to make.
I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Olson.
Well, I think you made some of my points, but full disclosure, I also live sort of in that general area. So I spent a lot of time around there riding on scooters with my little ones. And so I can appreciate, and I don't disagree with you as far as extending this road. To me, it makes sense, especially with the emergency vehicles, and understanding too that trying to navigate down those narrow roads, I can imagine Mr. Irwin is here, that'd be a very difficult task. So it makes sense to me. I think where we need to, as a city, pay attention to that Marianne, you know, there's parks, there's a stop sign that gets blown constantly with, and these big trucks is something that we're going to have to really pay attention to, because there are, and I've noticed there are a lot of big vehicles that will no longer be going up Delora, they're going to be going up Marianne. And so we're going to have, you know, we're kind of moving one issue to another area. So we just really need to mitigate those risks of these trucks, you know, especially thinking about the 30-kilometer zones and the parks and stuff like that. So I think that's something that I'm really going to be paying attention to. But I would certainly support this road extension. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dave.
Thank you. So we haven't quite got our ducks all on track yet, but we will be forming a transportation committee. And I think that's certainly, I would like to hear from staff with regards to the petition. I think there's an infinite amount of good sense in the petition, but there's also going to be other issues. You know, before that stop sign existed, there were problems up there with the playground and people driving too fast because it's a fairly long road. And so people get in a hurry to get to the other end of it. And I mean, that happens in every neighborhood, every single one. We're all a little bit guilty in someone else's neighborhood, perhaps a little more careful in our own. So we need to find ways to make it safe and beautiful and functional. And so I quite agree that connections are needed. I absolutely believe in having more ways than one to get into and out of a neighborhood, if at all possible. And so let's hear what staff have to say, and let's make sure that we look at it from every perspective, so we don't solve one problem by creating another.
Thank you very much, Councillor Day. Councillor Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, Mr. Briggs, thank you for pounding the pavement up there. I think I have an appreciation. I think any of us do who've campaigned door to door during an election understands what that entails. So, you know, I'm acknowledging your effort and you, Mr. Fishback, for being the voice of that effort this evening. I think anytime there's a grassroots kind of citizen movement to identify a perceived or actual problem area in one of our neighborhoods, it behooves us to listen. I think we have to do the investigation. I think we need a better understanding of kind of what the plans maybe were at one stage and you know how they've evolved to where they are today and what we can do about it. And I think Councillor Day's suggestion that the Transportation Committee review this, I think is good. It's great timing. I'll refrain from making a motion at the moment because I know there's two great ideas or motions on either side of me with Councillor Jansen and Councillor Day, but suffice to say, I support a much closer look at this from city staff to get a better understanding of what we're doing now and what we could do in the future to help you out. So thank you.
Thanks very much. I just want to echo those comments. Great job, guys. I was really impressed. Really good job. You know, I think we're about to have our traffic flow software completed by the end of this month. And hey, that's something we can test this on in actual fact. So I think it's really great. Your timing is impeccable. So what I'll do is I'll turn it back over to Councillor Jensen. Not seeing any other questions or comments. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going off the top of my head here, so I welcome any additions, but I would ask, or I put forward a motion that our engineering staff review the roads, or how about the road and infrastructure for those surrounding neighborhoods, to make sure it makes sense or is consistent with you know what current expectations are. Sorry, Marcy, I'm going off the top of my head. Do you have enough there? Or?
Mr. Earl, do you have a better way of putting it? You're great at this.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think council would like us to examine the feasibility of the proposal described by Mr. Briggs and Fishback this evening and report back with any feedback.
Okay, great. And that'll probably include cost estimate and who's paying for it, right?
Yeah, we would begin by looking at our transportation master plan, seeking advice within that, then look to the two affected property owners on both the Delora and the Marianne side to understand their interest in such a proposal. And then we would come back with comments from the fire team, the engineering team, and other infrastructures that may or may not be affected.
Perfect. That's perfect. Can I get a seconder to the motion? Councillor Grove, discussion? Yeah. Councillor Day.
I just want to add to the motion an amendment that it come back to the Transportation Committee, because I think it is really important to get a broader buy-in, because invariably you fix one thing, something else comes up, and you know, we can't think of everything. We think of a lot of things because we've seen a lot of things happen, but we need to be really putting our thinking caps on and involving our whole community before we bring the secret sauce to the table.
Councillor Jensen?
I like all of this, your worship. I just, for Chief Administrator, I think it behooves a look in not, that's very, a very narrow ask, the motion you propose. I would like to see it a little more comprehensive for the surrounding blocks as well. Would that happen naturally or? Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, not seeing any more questions or comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Okay, that's unanimous, motion carried. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We're close. 7.5, Christine Chamberlain, it's regarding sewer on Ridley Drive. Oh, yes, there you are. So you spoke to it already, so yeah, but go ahead, please. Yeah. Could you hit the mic?
Good evening. I just wanted to talk about possibility of getting sewer on Ridley Drive. I went around and I have a petition that's been signed. We have 6 yeses for sure, 7 maybes. 2 were against it because they've already done their septic their septic. And then 1's already on, out of 18 homes, we've got 13 that are really wanting this project to go ahead. The problem is we spoke with people on Halser who had 3 houses had it done last year. It cost $30,000 for them to do it with Dr. Ho contracting. And the city's engineering technician is saying it could be anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000 per household for us to do this. So we kind of, everybody's nervous about how to go ahead with this or you know, how to proceed. So I wanted to find out, is the city looking at getting sewers down these streets? And if so, when are we looking at?
And did we answer that for you before then? So you're
Yeah.
happy with that answer?
So
right
it's
now?
on the way.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, on that note, we'll go to item number 8, notice of motion of Councillor Jordison on the Accessible British Columbia Act. And if you could just, this is not up for debate or anything, Councillor Jordison, if you could just read your motion, which will be scheduled for a future council meeting. Councillor Jordison.
So bear with me, it's lengthy. So the recommendation is that the city of Colwood continue to participate on the joint intermunicipal advisory committee on disability issues as the municipality accessibility committee, with potential partners to include the township of Esquimalt, the district of Highlands, the city of Langford, the district of Metchosin, district of Sauk, and the town of View Royal, and that the draft terms of reference for this joint accessibility advisory committee be provided for consideration of approval in the fall of 2023. And that each member municipality of the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee appoint 1 elected representative and 1 elected alternate representative to the committee. And that each member municipality of this Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee allocate its share of annual operating funds for the committee expenses. And that a Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee ad be placed seeking members for this committee. And that staff collaborate with the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee to prepare the terms of reference for the accessibility plan. And that the $10,000 funding allocated in year 1 of the 2023-2027 financial plan originally for development of the accessibility plan be used as funds permit instead for assistance as and when required with the development of the accessibility plan and or contribution towards retaining a consultant to prepare an accessibility plan, which member municipalities will apply to their own accessibility initiatives, and facilitated engagement sessions such as focus groups or surveys on barriers faced by the public in accessing services of the partner municipalities. And further, that the city of Colwood establish an email address to receive public comments as set out in the Accessible BC Act legislation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jordison. Okay, item 8, new business. On 9, pardon me. I have to wear my reading glasses here. Brian Irwin, Chief Irwin, if you can come up and just introduce the item. Pretty straightforward, self-explanatory.
Thank you. So I no formal presentation here for you, but here to answer any questions on the report that's been submitted in regards to the renewal of the mutual aid agreement with the City of Langford for fire rescue services.
Okay, I'll start off. I do have one question.
Certainly.
It's just sort of out of interest. Over the last 5 years, we've had the agreement and it's been phenomenal. Like it's 1 + 1 = 3 for us right now on the agreement. So just out of interest, I was just wondering, is it really mutual? Like, I don't know if you keep track of this. How many times have we provided aid to Langford? And how many times have they
I
provided?
don't
aid
have
to
the
us?
exact numbers with me right now.
Okay.
However, we are roughly in that 60-40, 50-50 range. It is a mutual arrangement. You know, with the call volume going up, concurrent calls we're relying on that mutual aid service quite frequently.
So it sounds like it's in our favor if it's 60-40.
60-40.
Yeah, because I mean,
sometimes it's 40-60.
since they have over twice our population, that's a good deal for us then.
Yeah, and it really comes down to the call volumes and the time of day and things like that, and the nature of the calls that we're receiving it to.
Okay, thanks a lot. Council Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, quick question for you. I was over at Langford Hall number 2 the other day talking to Chief Aubrey there, and he was busy running 9 new recruits through their paces. And I just wonder if does that impact the agreement at all? Their increase in size, you know, in terms of need from us to support them, or availability, response time for them to support us, or is that just regular growth?
What that's going to do once they fully staff out and staff station 2, what that'll do is actually our requirement to assist them will be a little bit less. So they'll have 2 fully staffed engines between Langford 1 Hall and Langford 2 Hall, which will allow a little less demand for us to backfill them when they're receiving those concurrent calls.
Thanks so much. Councillor Jensen. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I fully endorse your submission here, Chief, and it wasn't that long ago. Well, maybe it was now. When I was on protective services, and there was no dialogue whatsoever with the chief, with the department, between departments. So I'm proud to say that we're in this new reality, which I fully endorse. So the more we can work together and mitigate calls, larger calls together in the Western communities, West Shore, then the better off we all are as residents here. So I'm happy to move the recommendation, Your Worship.
I'll come back to you. I'll just let Councillor Day ask a question here.
Thank you.
Councillor Day.
We are on the same wavelength. I was just going to recommend that we renew the mutual aid agreement, as is the recommendation.
So Councillor Jensen, your seconder. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those that are in favor. And that's unanimous, motion carried. Thank you very much, Chief Irwin. You must be good to get it done in 30 seconds. Okay, we move on to 9.2, Carolyn Richmond, Climate Planner, the Draft Climate Action Plan and Climate Planning Foundations Report. Over to you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. I'm Carolyn Richmond, and I have been the climate planner for Colwood since March, and it is my pleasure to be here tonight to present an overview of the revised climate action plan and report for your consideration. We have a team of staff and leadership at Colwood that's strong and ready to move forward with climate action based on your direction. This comes in the context of a climate emergency, which was formally declared by council in Colwood Council in 2019. And as described by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, this is a rapidly closing window that we have to reduce impacts and irreversible damage. But Colwood has been a leader in climate action through many initiatives and partnerships to date, but a clear climate action plan is needed to address the climate emergency. So tonight, I'm going to give you a brief overview of first the development process to date and where this update has taken us, the framework that we have for this revised climate action plan, and the staff recommendations. So back in November of last year, Council received a detailed presentation of the draft climate plan and the climate planning process from the consultants. And this graphic shows you an overview of that whole process. So starting in February 2022, the planning process began, background information and gathering of partners and participants in the planning process. There were a number of engagement processes with surveys and workshops, and that resulted in work that was then assessed by our consultants for action planning and that draft document that you had a look at in November. So what we heard after November, when the draft plan came to you, was in November, Council endorsed the draft plan for public engagement. And then what we heard after that was some good feedback via survey and detailed emails from both from residents and from stakeholders. This just summarizes 3 of the key themes we heard repeated in some of the feedback that came in. So we heard strong support and a sense of urgency in the feedback, that there was a lot of feedback for revising the plan to make it more accessible and readable, and to increase the importance of the natural environment or nature-based solutions in our climate action. So in reviewing all of the feedback from the public, stakeholders, and staff, we also convened an internal Colwood Climate Action Team, and that team is prepared to help guide our climate action moving forward, but also help guide the revision of what you have before you. So these are the 2 documents you have before you. The Climate Planning Foundations Report is a revision of the original draft plan, a bit more readable, and that capturing all that good planning work that was done prior to this time, and then a new draft climate action plan. The hope is that, and the intention is that this new climate plan would be readable and more with direct and accessible language for the public and staff alike, clear actions and defined priorities. The intention is that it's implementation ready for staff to pick up and move forward with immediately, especially given the urgency of this issue. Back in November, when you had that presentation from the consultants, you heard about the best practices with climate planning, which is the integration of mitigation, climate mitigation with climate adaptation, which results in more effective climate action and reduces the potential conflict of actions, as well as provides co-benefits of these actions for the community. The original plan did not have broad goals guiding the whole plan. So when we had a look back at the whole planning process and what resulted in that, these three goals seemed pretty clear. We're aiming to reduce emissions to net zero by 2050 or sooner, to build climate resilience, so that adaptation piece, and maximizing the co-benefits of this work. This graphic gives you a visual of the framework that the climate plan is, the draft climate plan is based on. So a vision and three goals guiding the 6 pathways. In those pathways, we have strategies and actions to meet those 3 goals. So the pathways, originally there were 5. These have been revised slightly, and an additional pathway guiding us towards those goals. And you'll find on page 21 of the climate plan is a roadmap that the consultants used modeling tools to calculate approximately how much we can expect to reduce in greenhouse gases by the different actions within these pathways. And then with that is also our adaptation actions and whatnot, forming the basis for the plan. In climate action, partnerships are essential, and Colwood has been really strong in building a lot of partnerships for climate action. This plan would build on that. So internally, it's really essential that that we have strong partnerships across departments and work together really well, and across the community, jurisdictions, and stakeholders. The aim would be to build those partnerships stronger so that we can do this as collective action, this important climate work. The staff recommendation is that council endorse the climate action plan and the Climate Planning Foundation's report for master planning purposes. If the documents are to be endorsed, the word draft would come off and the date to be updated. And we would propose to come back with an implementation plan and budget initially to provide those details for council. And finally, I just want to take a moment to say a huge thank you to the many Colwood residents and partners and stakeholders who all put a lot of time and shared their expertise and perspectives in this process. And for that, we're very, very grateful. So I want to thank you very much for your time tonight. And Ian Borhill and I are here to happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. I will open the floor to Council Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. It's great. Very comprehensive. It was a lot of light reading through the weekend. No, it really is good. And I think, we don't need to dwell on the need for this. I mean, we merely look in the news every day or go outside and smell the air, and we can understand the implications of climate change. So very supportive. I think in terms of tangible actions, maybe perhaps you or Mr. Borhill could, I'm looking, for example, in pathway 1 under municipal leadership, and there's a goal there, M13, which talks about climate implications in decision making. And that, as a group here, as staff, who develop and implement a climate implications section for council reports, I'm interested in how that relates to, development, capital projects. The timeline was kind of 2023 to 2025. So I was curious when we might see that, because I think that'd be interesting. And then I also wanted to, stress that juxtaposition between, this buy-in between the community and everyone acknowledging it's important on the one hand, and on the other hand, you so much as threaten to charge somebody $2 for parking and they lose their minds. So we somehow have to bridge this gap where the notion that we reduce parking footprints or something in the West Shore is a non-starter, and yet allegedly everybody wants to get on board with climate change. So they'll, do their part in planting a tomato plant or driving an electric car, but take away the 2 spots in front of my house and, all hell breaks loose. So I have a little challenge in seeing how we take what is really a solid plan and transition it to, tangible action, because I'm a little, I guess, suspect of the buy-in, I suppose. So, but going back to that M13, that climate implication and decision-making plan, I'm just wondering if there's a more refined timeline on that and when we could see something that we could deploy.
Through your worship to Councillor Ward, that item is, as far as I understand, there used to be something similar to that on council reports. So I know that the discussion at the team table was to try to find that would be one of the first priority type items. Near the beginning of the climate plan in the executive summary, there's some priority actions identified there, and that is listed in there. So I'm not sure if Ian wants to comment further on that.
Thanks, Carolyn. Yes, that would be one of the first implementation items. We've been talking about it for a long time, and the challenge is to try to develop a consistent approach, both for development decisions and other decisions that are before council, such as major capital projects. We already asked to calculate the climate implications of a lot of projects that deal with provincial and federal grants. So we're looking at something that would also provide guidance in those situations as well.
Thanks so much. Councillor Grove. Yes, thank you very much. This report is fabulous. I really love this. I'm impressed with how it was fleshed out in recent months to add details and elements that I think anybody and everybody can latch onto somewhere, to something, however small it may seem to be, that leads toward a better, more carbon aware or lower carbon neighborhood. I think it's open to many different directions, so it sounds terribly flexible. And of course, we hear your message about urgency. We all hear that now, and I would be happy to include a motion to adopt the advancement of the date up to 2040. It did say 2050 or sooner, so how about 2040? I would be happy to do that. And thank you.
Thanks so much. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'm curious about the biodiversity and nature-based solutions initiatives and how we can get there, because I've known for some time that that's where I feel we need to be looking, from step one being, be climate aware. What are we losing with this choice, or what are we gaining with this choice? How are we going to bring that knowledge forward because I don't feel like we know what the services are that our biodiversity or wetlands or other areas are already providing for us until we lose them. My only experience myself with really understanding that was the year a development, pretty small development really, a couple of town duplexes were put in just above my neighborhood, and the removal of the trees to facilitate those two foundations going in caused huge impacts to the water systems. And in fact, never saw it again. But the first year after that happened, we had white water running down my driveway and through my yard, which was okay because it had a place to go. But it just really made me see it differently than I had seen before. And I think it's, I was just lucky to have that experience, to understand it, to learn from it. And how do we bring that forward to our community?
Through your worship to Councillor Day. Yeah, this is a matter of close to my heart for sure, nature-based solutions. I think that the plan attempts to try to put into play some actions so that we can get some baseline information, such as around biodiversity, but as well as engage the public. That's really critical in what kind of services are provided by nature aside from other, other important factors, but these are critical services. And there are pieces throughout the plan that I hope will come together and help create, build awareness, whether it's from our natural assets that we're trying to understand more about and how to protect, down to how we are doing our gardening and what we're protecting along our roadsides and in our parks, protecting and restoring and enhancing, because and we can, I think that as people experience situations where if we put a lot of money into a pipe and the maintenance that's going to come with that and replacement costs and things like that, and we look at the alternatives that might potentially be there to use nature-based solutions, where the older it gets, the more valuable it is, and not needing that maintenance and whatnot. I think that this is a growing understanding that the public has, but I think the answer to that would be that it's very important that we have a really good communication engagement with the public on this, that we work together with partners in the community and we help build our understanding about what the value is of those natural areas and those natural elements in Colwood are that we need to protect and enhance as part of that climate action. So I'm hoping that answered what you were looking for. Thank you.
I'll just wrap this up right now. Carolyn, I just thought this report was outstanding. I had the opportunity to get the Suzuki Foundation, their checklist, and what a good climate action plan should have. And you've included everything and you've gone beyond in actual fact. So I'm just going to tell you, I'm super impressed with that. And, I just knew you as that quiet person that had your head down and working all the time, so I can see what the product was. So kudos to you and the team for doing this. I just have a couple quick questions here. The first one is, did we, because I was reading who you pulled in, it looked like you pulled in a lot of people, CRD, everybody. But the one peoples that we didn't include was the First Nations. Did we actually pull them in at all for consultation on this?
I'm going to refer to Ian on this because that was the process before I came to Colwood.
Please.
Thanks. Thank you, Worship, for that question. Yes, in the initial stages of the project, the local First Nations were invited to take part, both in-person and virtual engagement sessions. There was also conversations directly with the Esquimalt Nation with respect to this project and other projects in our ongoing discussions with their staff team. But insofar as the engagement went, it really was about telling them about the opportunity to provide input as much as it was gathering input from the nations. This wasn't a project that we saw significant input from them, but that was their decision.
Okay. Okay. So second one that's related to it, because I caught this right and I thought maybe we've been doing this all wrong all the time here, but I noticed just in the front where you do the land acknowledgement, this is getting kind of down in the weeds here, but use Chichimista. Who are Chichimista speaking people? Because that's new. As far as I know, we were Lekwungen speaking people here. So who is Chichimista?
Thank you for that question, Your Worship. So Chichimista was actually the family group that was a signatory to the Douglas Treaty, representing this area around Colwood and what's now known as Esquimalt Lagoon. So they're actually a really important group in the local area as it relates to First Nations and First Nations history. We have been in consultation with the local First Nations about how to support the knowledge of that history and specifically Chichimistas past here in Colwood. We actually, in a presentation to Esquimalt Chief and Council earlier this month, talked about how to represent the name of their nation, and they've asked for some changes. So that'll be coming forward to Council shortly.
Okay, super. So I learned something new. I'm going to have to change my own acknowledgement then. right? That's interesting. Thank you. The next question I have is, I know this is probably not till later on, the financial impact, to make sure that we're starting to put money away for this properly for the future. Is that a later discussion as we develop the strategies? Is that when we get that granular, or I never see that in a big plan normally because things change, but sometimes we do.
So in the staff report, I outlined the money that we do have in the Climate Reserve Fund, primarily from the province. And the idea would be that we would be immediately looking at how we can add to that and leverage more funding. But the proposal, if the plan is endorsed, is to bring back a budget proposal initially for council to consider with the implementation plan, initially using what we do have and proposing how we can build on that.
Super, thank you. So the last comment I want to make is it's just one change that I highly recommend. I really recommend this. And it's throughout your report, through the report, the plan itself. And you talk about communication. It's, you talk about it in every section sort of thing, but I think it is one of the what you call pathways. I think that communication is a pathway that should be a standalone pathway. And I'll tell you why. This is about change. Okay, every one of us, including myself, struggle with this right now because, oh, it's the guy next door that's going to do this. It's not me. I'm not going to change, or, because it's always better that the neighbors change and not me. So the reason why it should be its own strategy, because when you do major changes in companies, that is always the lesson learned. Oh, shoot, we should have tackled the whole communication and celebrate successes and talk, getting the involvement of the people and talking about the successes of citizens, pulling them in. And I think that pathway should be a pathway. Else look at strategy. No, it's going to be higher in level. So it's a pathway. And it's so that we stand out and we always remember that, that we've got to address this. So that's how I personally feel about this. And I want it to succeed, because I think that if we fail to do this, we're going to fail. Because right now what we have is sort of the corporate checklist. And, everybody's going to say, oh yeah, I do this, but there's a culture that we have to change, right? And so you do that through communication. And part of that whole communication strategy is, I noticed that, we still have targets to TBD in the draft right now. But to have, maybe those 5-6 targets, so people know we're progressing, we're changing, and we can celebrate it. So that's, but the only thing that I'd like to see in this, and I'm just recommending it to you. I'm not, I don't want to make a motion towards this or anything, but I would strongly recommend you do this, because I think it's just such an important thing to do. I just think that without it, we're just going to fail again, because not everyone can afford, not everyone can afford that electric vehicle. And, try to tell people with F-150s out there, right? It's all generations, right? And the more we involve the citizens of all ilks and all generations, and you do that through good communications. So that's my rant and rave for the evening. Thanks. Thank you very much. So at this point in time, can I get a motion to draft? And the motion is to adopt this plan. Okay. Next plan. Second. Okay. And you just. Sorry, Councillor Grove.
Motion to adopt the climate action plan in Colwood and to change the date, target date to 2040 from 2050 or sooner.
Okay. Do you still second that? That's very aggressive. Councillor Olson, do you still second that? Yeah. Go ahead if you want. Yep. Well, if you second it, we can open it up for discussion anyways. Okay. Just with, it'll be seconded by Councillor Olson. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, your worship. I'm in favor of the first portion. David, I don't have enough information before me to really make a confident decision on the difference between 2040, 2050. I would make a motion to sever those two items, your worship.
Okay. So an amendment, amended. It's what, yeah.
Vote on two separate things.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll go through this first one. Well, Isaac, you want to sever it right now, so we don't have to take it to the vote. Okay, so are you, Councillor Grove, UK severing your motion? So we can, yes, to take the 2040 as a separate motion. Well, it is severe.
Yeah. Yes, I'd be happy to sever my motion.
Okay, seconder, are you okay with severing the motion?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Any other discussion on the original motion? Councillor Day.
I guess I'm not sure if my discussion is on the original motion or the current motion, but it's on the motion that's on the table. It's relevant. I think it's really important to send the message about how important it is that we act. Now, do I believe that we will achieve absolutely everything that's in our plan by 2050? No, I don't. Do I think we can make a better effort? Absolutely. And I also agree with the mayor's comments about communication. Because I'm one of the grumpy people who can sometimes fold my arms and sit in the corner when I am pushed to my limits. I can appreciate that that's not really helpful. So we are all in this together, whether we want to be or not. And we need to do something. It's very critical because our kids are losing faith. And that's not okay.
Thank you very much, Councillor Grove again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to say that I strongly endorse this, and if a sense of urgency is required, then to speak to my severed half. I think that 2040 simply communicates that, and the communication of that urgency is important. And the target date 2050 has no bearing in any reality. We can't possibly know where we'll be. This whole issue could blow up in 16 months, weeks, days from now. There's been all sorts of stuff happen this past few years that is totally out of sync with the calendar. Things happen sooner than they should, faster than they should, and here we are. So I think 2040 is simply moving that date because it is a close date. It communicates the sense of urgency. And I know I'm speaking out of turn on the motion because the first motion, I think adopting the plan is, for me, that's the key. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay, I'll put the, I'll call the question on the original motion, which is to endorse the climate action plan. Call the question. All those that are in favor? And that's unanimous. Motion carried. Now we'll go to the second part, which is the 2040, moving up the date on the 2040. And I don't have, okay, so we don't have, you had the original motion, I believe, Councilor Grove. Did we get a seconder on that? Who was, oh, you seconded it, right? Okay. Okay, so let's open her up now. Councilor Ward.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I mean, the vision in the report specifies 2045 as a goal. So there's kind of numbers all over the place. If I'm being honest, there's a logo that says 2045. There's another spot that says 2050. I think what I'm more concerned about is, I don't want to sort of just put something out there that sounds great, but I'd like to understand from staff maybe what the actual ramifications of a change like that are. You've spent considerable amount of time on a report. There's dates in it for a reason. There could be budget ramifications. I mean, I look at replacing the city fleet, for example, by a certain date. Now, I don't think this affects that, but I just want to make sure that before we arbitrarily move 10 years, that we aren't really complicating something that hasn't been foreseen. So perhaps, maybe there's some insight there. Does it really change anything, or is it just a nicer target to have that we can communicate?
Marilyn? Nope.
It just went out. It wasn't your fault. And if you pulled it down, the work made that. It moved right there. I think that's about.
That date. Oh. So now, okay, do you want me to, yeah, sorry. I should have heard that it wasn't working. So as I was saying, I think that there is some modeling in there. We'd have to make sure that that all the numbers are considering an adjusted timeline. But for the most part, on page 21, the roadmap numbers are for our goals to 2030. I'd have to review the rest of the plan and come back to let you know if there are any additional changes needed in order to adjust for 2040, unless Ian's thinking of anything more. Wait.
Thanks, Carolyn. Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Really, we've got some modeling that's looking at the goal set for 2050, and that was a reflection of our upper levels of government setting goals for 2050, as well as the global community looking at that as a key date. So that's why that 2050 date was chosen, and I don't think there's major implications beyond that modeling that Carolyn's already outlined.
Mr. Earl, please. No. No.
I'll use this mic over here. As described, it would take some calculation, but just top of mind, thinking about 16 years and 3 months to convert 6,500 existing furnaces is just over 400 home retrofits that would need to be done annually with that level of targeting. And so we've already got an aggressive plan on building retrofit for existing residential, which is one of the biggest areas of focus in terms of carbon reduction. Being more aggressive and trying to achieve that by 2040, I think recognizes the emergency. It would substantially lift the degree to which we need to focus on an aspect such as that one.
Makes sense. Thank you very much. Councillor Jensen. Oh, you're.
Does that work? Thanks, Diego. I feel like I want to support this philosophically, but this is too important. And I don't think it's something to be taken lightly and for us to decide this in 5 minutes. And I'm not comfortable with that. And we owe a debt to our children, and I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Day, but I mean, let's do it properly here and reasoned and costed and with some thought and not whimsically. So those are my thoughts. I won't support that portion of the motion. Thank you. It has nothing to do with the climate. It has everything to do with where we are right now. Thank you.
Hey, I'm working. I guess the gods like me tonight. Well, yeah, I understand that. I hear the concern. We don't want to make rash, unrealistic choices at the table. We want to make reasoned, sound decisions here. It is a climate emergency. We would like to move it up sooner. So I would like to suggest an amendment, if that's amenable to the table, which is to ask staff to come back with what the implications would be for potentially moving the date up to 2040 or 2045. That way we've got some leeway. We can move as aggressively as is feasibly possible.
Can I get a seconder on that motion? The amendment, please. Okay. You all caught up, Marcy? No, I keeps kicking me out here. So I need discussion on the amendment. Councillor Ward.
I think I just would speak maybe aligned with what Councillor Jansen said. I mean, I think it's already a very aggressive target. It's realistic. Staff have done a lot of work on it. I think it, somehow we've now portrayed this as being lesser when in fact I think it's actually a very aggressive plan, and it's a leadership plan. It's very much aligned with the federal plan for net zero emissions by 2050. And so I see a lot of logic in aligning it with the overarching plan we're looking for as a country and as a province. Now, if we want to send staff back to the table to do more work on this, to establish a leadership position at 2040, fine. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I think at the end of the day, though, actions speak louder than words. And I think we're getting caught up in an arbitrary number. Like I said, I've seen around the table ample times where there's opportunity to do things. I just spoke of parking, for example. So we can lower this to 2040, and the next time we approve a development and insist on excess parking spots for per unit, what does that say? Are we hypocrites? So I'm going to stick with 2050. I don't see any need to change it. I think actions speak louder than words. We can do that in our everyday lives, and we can do that here at the council table. But establishing an arbitrary number doesn't mean much to me. And we can make it 2030 if we want to be really cool. But what difference does it make? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, seeing no other questions or comments, I'm going to call the question on the amendment, which is to send it back to staff to look at the implications of moving the date up to 2040 or 2045. I believe that's what I heard. And so all those in favor of that motion? And those opposed? Okay. So no one, yeah, so everyone's opposed then? I didn't see your
I was
hands.
for it. I didn't.
Oh, sorry.
I was thinking.
Okay. So Counselor Day was for, I'm for, I was for the amendment. And Counselor, sorry, I don't know you how. Okay, yeah. So Counselor Grove is for, everybody else is opposed. So motion amendment is defeated. So we'll go back to the original motion, which is 2040. Okay, and any other questions, comments on this one? Seeing none, I will ask the question. All those in favor of moving it to 2040? Okay, Councillor Grove and Councillor Day, and those opposed? That's the rest of us. I would have voted for it, but I want to understand the impact. That's why I voted for it, looking at the impact of it. So that's this item. And well, I've decided I am going to put another motion on this. And I'm not going to force it, but what I'm going to request is that we look at, in fact, looking at a communication strategy, communication pathway right now, because I know that, the success of our climate action plan will greatly depend on behavioral change. And that's at the individual, collective, and at the policy levels. And I think it's important that we identify that and that we're thinking, it's standing on its own, even though it's embedded throughout. I think that I'd like to see that, because we're going to fail, because we're just doing the corporate check marks right now on it. And without this communication plan and getting everyone involved, we're just setting us up for failure. So I'm going to make that motion. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Jensen. Discussion. Seeing none. Okay. Could you repeat what I just said? It sounded good.
It's that communication be added as a pathway to the plan.
Okay, Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I absolutely support that. I think that's what I said at the outset, was that we have this juxtaposition between, citizens that say they support this and want to see it happen. And then, every time you try to take some sort of action that supports it, you'll be, roundly criticized. So unless we effectively communicate and get effective buy-in, game over, where it's a non-starter. So love it and fully support it.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, seeing no other discussion, I will I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Motion carried. Thank you very much. And I'm just going to take a 5-minute break, a health break here. So if everybody could be back here at 8:33, please. The meeting. Okay, we're on 9.3, Desiree Givens. If you want to introduce the items, a rezoning application RZ 2216 for 2324 Soup Road.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. The next application, or the next item in your agenda is a rezoning application for the property at 2324 Soup Road. For site context, the property is located at near the intersection of Soup Road and Linlark Place at the entrance to a residential cul-de-sac. Just for a bit of history on the file, the application was first received by staff in August of last year. It then underwent a referral and review period where it was sent out to other city departments as well as external agencies. Feedback was provided to the applicant in December, and community engagement was held in the month of February. And the Planning and Land Use Committee first received this application in May of 2023. And I should note in the background, staff were working with an architect to develop that Transit Growth Area 1 zone in the months of February to April, and council considered that in April, on April 26th, and I'll get into the details of that later. And then the applicant is here before you tonight seeking direction on the application. So this is the proposal that was first considered by the Planning and Land Use Committee. Their recommendation was to have the applicant revise the proposal so that it aligns with the Transit Growth Area 1 zone. Since then, the applicant has revised their proposal by incorporating a setback as shown here, and this is the proposal that's before you tonight. It's a 6-story apartment building with that the applicant will share more details with in their application after this. But I'll just give a quick overview of the OCP policies for your consideration and how the proposal aligns with those policies. So first set of policies here are the built form. The transit growth area where this property is located is permits ground oriented and low rise buildings up to 6 stories in limited situations where an enhanced urban design can be provided in order to mitigate the impacts of the additional 2 stories. Staff have interpreted this to mean either incorporating design solutions such as stepping down the scale of the height of the building as it approaches the existing single family residential around it, or by providing a substantial setback away from existing single family residential. The applicant has provided this stepping down feature, and so staff are satisfied that 6 stories in limited situations has been achieved. The floor area ratio in the transit growth area in the transit growth area land use designation is permitted to go up to 2.5. The applicant's proposal is for 2.3. So again, that also aligns with the transit growth area. The transit growth area also requires a transition in scale to existing predominantly single family detached neighborhoods. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a single family residential neighborhood right behind the property to the north. And so the policy is speaking to providing a gentle transition in scale down to that. The applicant has provided, like I said, a transition in scale, but staff are not convinced that it's a gentle transition. Although we're open to hearing from council if you have a different interpretation of that. In terms of the public realm policy, the transit growth area land use designation calls for improvements to the public realm, including amenities for cyclists, pedestrians, and transit users. The applicant is proposing to install frontage improvements in accordance with city bylaws and policies. This might include things like installing sidewalks, landscaping, bicycle lanes, and things like that. So again, staff are convinced that this policy has been achieved. The transit growth area land use designation also calls for protecting natural assets in accordance with site adaptive planning policies in section 11 of the OCP. These policies require site adaptive planning and policies to be applied to greenfield sites or sites that are in environmentally sensitive hillside areas. Because this application is not either greenfield or sensitive ecosystem hillside, there's limited applicability. However, I do want to note that for council's consideration, also the urban forest bylaw and the protection of trees on site. For this site, it would require the removal of nearly all protected trees on site, as well as some around the adjacent property. And as I mentioned earlier, the Transit Growth Area 1 zone was considered by council first in April of earlier this year. The Transit Growth Area 1 zone is a template zone. It was intended to help guide development in a manner that would achieve that policy for sensitive integration with the surrounding predominantly single-family residential. And it includes a set of criteria for ensuring that the gentle transition in scale is provided. And for a mid-rise apartment, I'll highlight some of the criteria for the mid-rise apartment on the next few slides, and as well as how the applicant's proposal aligns with the TGA1 zone. So the first criteria here is minimum lot area and lot width. The Transit Growth Area 1 zone requires a lot width of 60 meters and a lot area of 4,000 square meters for proposals that are 5 to 6 stories in height. This is really included in here just to encourage lot consolidation. That way we can more proactively plan for lands that are in the transit growth area, as well as the 60 meter lot width requirement was also in there to reduce the number of accesses off of Soup Road and other arterial roads that would be used as transit growth corridors. These minimum lot size and lot area were tested by the architectural firm that helped us prepare the zone. They determined that this was the smallest lot area and lot width combination that would be able to reasonably achieve the other criteria that I'm going to highlight for you. And the smallest criteria that'd be able to achieve also the FAR of 2.5 and the 6 stories, which is permitted by the transit growth area. Another criteria that the Transit Growth Area 1 zone has in it is setbacks for buildings. So this is kind of speaking to the requirement for stepping down the height of the building as it approaches existing single-family residential. So there's 2 setbacks included in the zone. The first one is for the first 3 stories of the building. That requirement is that the first 3 stories be set back 7.5 meters. And then it also has an additional setback requirement going 10 meters for the upper 3 stories. Another requirement was the landscape buffer. So in the Transit Growth Area 1 zone, we require a landscape buffer of about 5 feet wide by 6.5 feet tall in order to help ensure that there's privacy being created between the Transit Growth Area property or proposal and the existing residential surrounding it. Another criteria that we've included in the TGA1 zone was the setbacks for the underground structures. So the underground parkades are required to be 3 meters away from property line. This is to help encourage landscaping and the feasibility of actually being able to plant that landscape buffer. And so this is just the proposal's compliance with the TGA1 zone. On April 26, Council moved the staff recommendation that staff use this zone to evaluate proposals. And so this proposal mostly is not aligning with the lot area or the lot width. They're proposing a mid-rise apartment, which would have required a 4,000 square meter area, but the subject property is only 2,300 and the lot width is only 29. Staff recognize that this is a template zone and it's a general framework, so we are open to assessing proposals that might not align with the TGA1 zone if it can still be demonstrated that all the other policies in the OCP have been achieved. To that end, we have worked with the applicant to consider other options and possibly pursuing lot consolidation with 2322 Soup Road as shown here. This is we feel that if these 2 lots were consolidated, it would allow for a proposal that could possibly front Soup Road and move farther away from the residential the existing single-family residential at the north. Unfortunately, that wasn't able to happen, and I think the applicant will explain more in their presentation. However, staff do still feel strongly about pursuing lot consolidation for the reason that we want to prevent the possibility of 2322 Souk Road becoming an orphan lot. Due to the shapes of these lots, it wouldn't be as desirable for the properties over on the east of 2322 in order to take that on as a proposed lot consolidation in the future. So ideally, it'd be better if this proposal would be able to incorporate it. And just in terms of the timelines, if council were to approve this, either the staff recommendation or option 2, which would be the applicant's proposal as designed, this is kind of the next step. So we're at August 28th, council decision. So the next step would be to send out public notice, letting them know about the amending bylaw, and then we'd give first reading at a date to be determined. There's a few, I think, conditions within the recommendation that would need to be satisfied before we move forward with scheduling for first reading. And here are the options before you. So option 1 is the staff recommendation, which would be to rezone the property to the TGA1 zone. This would have the effect of limiting the development potential of the site to either a townhome use or possibly a 4-story apartment with variances. Option 2 is also up for council's consideration, is that the application be approved as it is currently designed, which would enable the 6-story apartment use, and that it be rezoned from the R1 zone to a new CD zone. The other options are to defer the application for further information or to deny the application. And that is it for me. I'm available if you have any questions afterwards, and the applicant is also here tonight and will be presenting their application to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the applicant's got a presentation. You said, okay, so I can get the applicant.
Oh, there we go. Rachel Sansom, 1498 White Pine Terrace. I'm here representing the applicant this evening, the Land Vision Group. As you're aware, our application has taken a few twists and turns in the last year. We're hoping that this evening we'll receive encouragement to move through the approvals process under a new CD zone that will be tailor-made for this project. Certainly, there's a lot more work to do, and we're very appreciative of the time and effort that council and staff have made to date. We'll work with staff to ensure that the sewer and Lindlark to service the area residents will be feasible, and we'll invite our traffic consultant to future meetings to discuss the safety of traffic on Souk Road. So we've provided a brief slide presentation just to show you the positive changes that we've made since this application went before the planning committee earlier this year. So here we are at 2324 Souk Road for a 6-story residential condominium. And as the planner noted, we're in the official community plan designation for transit growth corridor. Here's our CD zone proposal. So as noted, you can see my excellent photoshopping of the setback in the sort of light blue in the upper left-hand corner that shows how we've been able to step back that 5th and 6th floor of the building. We've also twisted the stairwell. Previously it was sticking out into that setback a little bit more. So our architect was able to work with that a little bit. So we're at 4 stories on what I'm going to call the north property line, which is the property line as you head around down Lindlark Road. So it's a 67 market condominium building, 43 1-bedrooms, 11 2-bedrooms, and then there's 7 3-bedroom homes in this proposal. So certainly we're hoping that we can encourage you to select option 2 this evening for a CD zone. So part of this, we're offering again to extend the sewer down Lindlark. Previously, we went as far as the first bend in the road as a gravity sewer, but in working with staff, we believe we can go all the way down Lindlark with a force main part of the way. We'll also be dedicating road on Souk Road about 3 meters so that you can create that 30-meter corridor that's required for the ultimate Souk Road build out, as well as building those improvements in the frontage. So all those frontage improvements will be done as a condition of building permit. And we'll certainly register the covenant to allocate parking for each residential unit. So we're in agreement with all of the terms of the option 2 in the staff report. So as noted, we're stepping back the fifth and sixth floors. So the first floors are set back 7.3 meters and the upper floors are 10 to 16 meters, and you'll see that on plan. We've also truncated part of the building on the east side. So we've got a 9-meter setback there. Again, the sewer force main that we're offering down Linlark so that the neighborhood that is currently serviced by septic fields can hook up. Our road dedication and improvements on Souk Road that would otherwise be expropriated and paid for by the taxpayer. So that'll all be at the developer's expense. These 3-bedroom units are quite rare in apartment buildings. This was an early request of staff that we provide those. So this will encourage families to be able to come and live in an apartment. And we know how hard it is to find family housing these days. So we're hoping that that will work out. And then on Linlark Place, as I noted, we'll bring our traffic consultant in a little bit later in the process, but we're going to dedicate a separate right and left turn lane off Linlark to get to Souk Road. So if you're waiting to turn left, you're not being held, or waiting to turn right, you're not held up by people going to turn left. So that's another thing. It's not necessarily required for this development, but we thought it would certainly help out the neighborhood because that was one of their concerns that we heard. So you can see here on plan, the red arrows show the setbacks at the 5th and 6th floors. It's actually goes anywhere from 10 to 12 meters on the 6th floor, and you can see the 9 meters on that upper right-hand corner. And on these 2 floors where you'll find our 7 3-bedroom units that are sort of denoted in the pinkish color. So we did try to make the TGA zone work. So it kind of came along at the same time as our application. We'd applied, and then council heard about the TGA zone at the very same time as you got to see our presentation. So we did take that to heart. We took the TGA zone. We went away and tried to make it work for this proposal. So the first problem, of course, was being the size of the lot. At a ½ acre, the TGA recommends 4 stories. Personally, a lot of 6 stories on ½ acre lots have been done in the last year. I've done several of them myself. So it certainly can be done. And again, the addition of this 5th and 6th floor is allowing us to provide these 3-bedroom units, which we did hear were important to the community. The other issue we had was with the 3-meter setback to the underground parkade. So effectively that loses parking spaces. So unless we're willing to give us lots of parking variances, we really couldn't afford to lose those parking spaces to meet the bylaw. Currently, we're not asking for any variances in that regard. So, and again, the expense of doing a 4-story building, which would still require a 2-story parkade, doesn't really pencil out. So the 6-story with the 2-story parkade is a kind of a common model. It works out. You see it all over the place. We're also not allowed to park on the surface level, I believe. And that would also take away green space for the building. So again, the 6-story on the 2, it does work out financially as well as providing the green space around the building. The 0 lot line for the parkade is also quite common. You'll see it everywhere. You can do shoring up to the edge of the property line. This is all supervised by our geotechnical engineers. And of course, excessive landscaping. And we can plant pretty big trees on the roof of the parkade as long as the structural engineer is aware of that and yet surprising him with a big planter at the last minute. So the lot coverage tends to shrink as the lot size shrinks too. So again, it makes it difficult to get a substantial footprint for the building we want. The suggested lot widths make sense if you only have an access on Souk Road. Our access is actually off Linlark. So the rationale there doesn't really contemplate a corner lot. So our traffic will not be coming directly onto Souk. It will get to come out onto Linlark first. We did make an attempt to purchase the land at 2322 Souk Road. A very significant offer was made. Unfortunately, the owners really don't want to move. So our realtor did his very best, but they're happy where they are and they didn't want to sell their house. So unfortunately, we weren't able to go forward with a consolidation there. And then the notion that a townhouse model would be better on this property, it would only yield about 6 or 7 units, and we're proposing 67. So as far as making good use of the land and addressing our housing crisis that we keep hearing about, we're housing a lot of people on a ½ acre, which is excellent at the end of the day for the environment. Really, you're reducing the need for all that car traffic, all the infrastructure you'd need to build 67 units elsewhere. Again, our traffic engineers have looked at the traffic impact assessment. They didn't find any safety issues here. Certainly in the transit corridor, we're encouraging transit use and other modes of transportation. So at the end of the day, reducing car traffic. Sanitary sewers, again, you can see the area in blue here would be serviced. And again, we want to work with staff a little bit more to make sure this really works out. But the blue would be gravity fed to Souk Road, whereas the green area would be a low pressure system. So each of these houses would have their own pump that would pump into the sanitary sewer. And our landscape plan, this is actually a lot of green space. It's almost 15% of the land area, if not more, which is quite generous. We have a pedestrian presence on Souk Road, as well as a nice pathway that goes back to the amenity area, providing a lot of privacy and separation between ourselves and our neighbors. And as noted, there's 25 on-site bylaw protected trees. These will be replaced by 72 replacement trees, either on-site or cash in lieu, so they can be planted elsewhere in Colwood. Thank you very much. We're here to answer your questions if you need.
Okay, I'll open it up for council. Councillor Jensen, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. A few things, small details, but it does feel like it's a bit of an awkward lot, and we're trying to fit a square peg into the round hole, and I appreciate the difficulties. I do see in the materials provided that there was an attempt made to purchase the property adjacent, which I think was probably the right thing to do at the time. My question is, though, what about the premise to the north side? I don't see in anything here that there was an attempt made to try and consolidate with a single lot to the north. I mean, I don't know what that provides, but clearly there's two sides to the property.
We were requested to pursue the property on Souk Road. Certainly we could chat with the neighbor to the north, but he's actually hasn't come forward with any concerns at this point. But staff was wanting us to go down Souk Road with the purchase.
With the TG1 zone, I get it. Okay, along Souk Road there, I know there was some discussion around that. And this, to be clear, this project started before we began to contemplate the or finalize the transit growth corridor zone. Is that right? Is that my understanding?
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, I didn't say that before. Yeah, we applied in August of last year, and our understanding the TGA zone was contemplated in February of this year. And it actually came to council at the same time as our application for the CD zone.
Okay, and I do appreciate your map of the sewer, because that was one of my questions. You mentioned down Lindlark, and first thing I wondered was how far. And I see from the map that it's contemplated right to, and quite frankly, I think that's certainly a huge net benefit to those people that reside in that area that certainly wouldn't be contemplated for sewers on behalf of the city, on the city's behest anyway. So that's great. The mix of units, can you explain the relationship? You mentioned the 3-bedroom units only come with the 5th and 6th floor. What's the relationship there? I don't understand.
3-bedroom units are traditionally not great profit centers in an apartment building. So the ability to go up with the 5th and 6th story, because you're still building a parkade and you're still building a roof. So the extra 2 stories are, less expensive to provide. And that does give us the opportunity to offer these larger units, because they're generally, as a sales square footage, you can't charge the same as you could for a 2-bedroom. So in the condo market, they're quite rare. So being able to go up those extra 2 stories, again, allowed us to be able to provide those units.
Thank you. And I do appreciate the mix of units. It's not just all studios or what have you. And I do see a net benefit to the community where the frontage improvements now would, if everything comes together as it's supposed to, the frontage improvements would carry from this project all the way through to the Veterans Parkway in the very near future. So I think, again, there's a net benefit to the community there. Some of the concerns I have are, again, just the awkward shape of the lot and fitting this building in, and it is a small lot. But that's it for me. Thank you, Your Worship. I'll listen to what others have to say.
Sir, would you like to come forward and
Sorry if I'm being inappropriate. My name's Brian Robson. I live at 3131 Linlark Place. And I am kitty corner from the back edge of this particular proposed development. So the developer is inaccurate or forgot or whatever their reasoning were, but my next door neighbor was approached by the developer for the sale of their home, and they said that they did not want to do so. Also, the neighbor that is towards my back fence, the roads, they were also approached by the developer to increase the footprint of their lot so that they could, manage to put something a little bit more in keeping with the neighborhood. So that wasn't presented to you as well. So we as the current owners of properties around this particular proposed development did not want to sell our properties. So therefore, their proposal of the lot consolidation that you see across, even though the next door neighbor to them as well also did not want to sell. So the lot consolidation that they're proposing is not very likely in the near future. Thank you for your time.
thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Counselor, we were on Counselor Dean. We still questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? I think we flogged this one to death, to tell you the truth. I get a motion then. Counselor Jensen.
Well, your worship, I do see a net benefit to the staff recommendation to pursue the transit growth corridor consistent with our TGA corridor. However, I do take notice that this development came to us in advance of that, or that being finalized. And I do believe there is a net benefit to the surrounding areas in the, as I mentioned, the sewers and the frontage improvements and what have you. And quite frankly, this is a kind of housing that we are seeking. We're short on this kind of housing. It speaks directly to our housing needs assessment. So I am going to put forward option number 2, I believe it was, which was the CD zone.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, your worship.
Okay, thank you very much. Do I have a seconder on that? Counselor Day, you seconding? No discussion. Okay. Counselor Grove seconds it, and I shall open it up for discussion. Counselor Day.
Thanks. There's 2 things that I like about the proposal. Because of the transit growth area, the fact that they're not adding to the direct in and out on Soup Road, I find that very attractive. I also appreciate that the product that they're offering is something that's very hard to find within the West Shore. The option for 3 bedrooms is very important, especially for younger families that have both boys and girls. Sometimes you just need a little more space. But 6 stories is a problem for me on a lot that's this small. That sticks with me. I understand the dynamics, but that's the reasoning behind the transit growth area. So comprehensive development zones is kind of a backward step. We're trying to ensure that our existing community is not negatively impacted by new development, which we need. Yeah, it's very difficult for me to look at this from the perspective of the precedent that it sets in terms of us not supporting our staff in hearing our concerns, where other areas of Colwood developments aren't too terribly concerned, it seems, with how the neighborhood feels and how they fit. So I need some convincing, and I hope someone has something good to offer.
Thank you very much. Councillor Olson.
I just wanted to echo some of your sentiments, and I think this is one that I've been really struggling with as well. While I can appreciate the different offerings as far as the units, the lot size to me is just far too small. And I've really been struggling with it, and I wanted to hear what other, members of council had to say. But I'm with you on this one, Councillor Day. I'm really struggling with the 6 stories and the lot size. The protected trees as well, I'm struggling with all of it. I'm not sure that I would support option 2, although I would consider option 1 and looking at a smaller building. But
Thank you very much. Councillor Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The proponent perhaps could answer the question to me, question of the buildings on a typical lot size. Is that the 6,000 meter lot? Sorry, I should have had this quicker. 4,000 meter lot. You would have perhaps 2 buildings. Is that because there's a sort of a maximum size to these buildings that seems to be efficient in the industry for aesthetics, perhaps, or access and favorability. Can you speak to that at all? I think there was something came up at a meeting.
Yeah, if I may, through the mayor, this is the same density, the same number of units and same size building per acre as the one down the road across from Royal Roads that was contemplated. So this is half an acre with half the size. That's 1 acre with twice the size. I don't know if that arithmetic makes sense. So essentially it's the same density wise as the 1 acre down the road. And as I did note, done several rezonings in the last year or so on a half acre with 6-story buildings, and being able to provide this much landscaping around it is actually kind of rare. Usually you're squeezed in a little more than that.
Okay, so I'm correct to assume that it's a similar building on the land where it otherwise to be on a bigger lot and 2 buildings, which would then comply with the TGA1 zone.
Yes.
So it's kind of like a half or a portion of.
Yeah, it's exactly what density is, number of units or square footage per acre. And this is exactly the same as the one down the road. It's just half the size and half the land.
Yeah, right. Okay, so thank you, because it seems to me that it oddly in the shape and so on, the references to that, but for some reason, it doesn't bother me in this particular case, and it seems to in fact work in some ways, and the setback in the top floors, the available 3-bedroom apartments all seem to it sort of does it for me. I think I may indeed be able to support the option 2 for that reason.
Rachel, just a quick question on, well, I have you up there. I just want to make sure, because the way I read this, if we were to choose option 1, is the offer for the sewering for the neighborhood still there?
It would be difficult financially to allow that.
Okay,
to
that's what I
provide that.
thought. I expected that.
This is like a density bonus, if you
I
will.
wanted to confirm that. Okay, thank you. Oh, Councillor Dale.
Just a question for staff, in comparing the TG1 to a CD zone, because that's not really fleshed out. Is the CD zone, it would be just approving what's been presented to us, but not tying it to the transit growth area, is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Day, through the chair. Yes, that's correct. So the CD zone would be essentially just adopting the zone as the adopting the proposal as it's currently designed, so that all the setbacks that were shown by the applicant, all the FAR and the current design of the building would be approved as is.
So that would, it would not protect any of the existing trees. It would provide the neighborhood with some sewer benefits, although most of them would have to have pumps. but it also meets all of the setback requirements. Is that correct?
Yes, it would be establishing new setbacks. So it's basically a CD zone is a site-specific zone that's designed around a proposal. So we would include, I think the applicant has the 10-meter setback for the first 4 stories and then an additional few meters for the upper stories. So the setbacks are very similar. And I should note that the protected trees in both scenarios would be under the considered under the urban forest bylaws. So the applicant would have the option to do cash in lieu in either the TGA1 zone or the CD zone.
And just one last question, and that's the implications of going back to creating CD zones instead of, you know, we've been trying to move towards some standards so that we don't have to play this game all the time with, you know, do you have rules or can we make our own? And I really want to uphold the efforts that the planning department has made to both recognize the challenges and benefits with development in the transit growth area, with trying to really articulate that TGA1 zone. Is there any downside to allowing this to be a CD zone?
Thank you, Councillor Day. I think the downside would be whether or not the proposal is able to achieve the sensitive integration policies in the OCP. That was really the primary purpose of bringing forward the TGA1 zone, is to include these criteria in order to achieve that policy in the OCP, which calls for a gentle transition in scale. That's why you see the minimum requirement for a lot size and of 4,000 square meters. And I think the option of the CD zone is there for proposals that might not fit exactly, but there's still like other benefits that come with it, or they're able to prove that there is still sensitive integration to the existing neighborhoods, or maybe they don't have an existing neighborhood, residential neighborhood around them. That's where I think the case of a CD zone would make most sense. But for a proposal that is surrounded by predominantly single family residential, I think the TGA1 zone was created created to address the gentle transition in scale and sensitive integration.
Thank you. And just, it doesn't matter when, but when we get to the vote, could I have the motion read back, please?
Sure, absolutely. Councillor Grove? Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The transition and scale discussion, you see the diagram on the staff presentation under OCP review. And I failed to see a large building. So we're talking townhouses next to the street, the frequent transit corridor, transitional residential, and then existing residential. I don't think that's what's happening on Souk Road. We have applications coming for us for thank you.
You are correct, Councillor Grove. It is not what's happening in Souk Road. I think we receive applications that ultimately assume a 6 stories is an outright consideration, whereas the official community plan opens up the opportunity for the right 6 story in the right location with the appropriate accommodations, but it's not an outright consideration throughout the corridor, like along Veterans Memorial Parkway in Souk, where we want to create a neighborhood hub, where we want height and we want presence. We've been more than supportive for 6-story apartment buildings that are dense and have very limited setbacks, and where there is loss of trees, but we're opting out for a more urban feel in those specific locations and corners where an arterial roads meet an arterial road. And then we have developed this transit growth area to just highlight what is a careful transition into an existing neighborhood that maybe not an arterial with an arterial, but more a local road with Souk Road. What is that appropriate transition? So you are correct. The official community plan, the diagrams that accompany the transit growth corridor show more often than not townhomes, 3-story, 4-story, transitioning into single family. And then the 6-story is definitely up for consideration with appropriate accommodations on the right size lot at the right location along the corridor.
Thank you very much. Can I just get a reminder, Chair of the Planning Use Committee, what was the recommendation again from, just jog my memory. What was the recommendation from Planning and Use Committee on this particular development? Councillor Ward?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And actually, I was going to trigger a question of my own here in a moment, but the Planning and Land Use Committee, it was the inaugural meeting of the committee, and the TG one zone had been presented as a new item, and it just been come before council. So that in itself was, I think, you know, an 11th hour kind of bit of a surprise. Not a lot of time to educate anybody on that. So at the time, there was another development before the committee, 2054, 2076 Duke Road, which subsequently was approved. This particular development was looked at under the framework of this new TG zone. And it was referred back to the proponent to look at items like the setback, the offsetting on the top 2 floors in relation to neighboring properties. So the comments were made that, you know, we wanted to see that buffer space there. There was some discussion around the sewer. It's felt that that was a nice offering, but the fact that it was just the gravity component wasn't quite, you know, wasn't considered maybe enough to kind of outweigh any perceived negatives. So, you know, in fairness, the proponent went away and obviously listened to those concerns and developed a new plan on the sewer, and then looked at that reduction on the 5th and 6th stories and amended the stairwell design, you know, to ensure sort of adequate buffer space between, you know, between themselves and the properties to kind of the east there. And I think there was some discussion with the committee too, is that the timing of the zoning, I know a specific question was, should this be grandfathered in sort of prior to the TGA1 zone, as Councillor Jansen had alluded to earlier. This had been on the table sort of, well in advance of that. I know there have been discussions with staff, but that was a comment that that was raised by the committee, concerns that, okay, does this go forward under the old zone? Does it fall under the new one? Ultimately, the decision was made to accept the TG1 zone because that was the information that had to go on at the time.
Thank you very much. You want to make, you have a question right now, did you say?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Ward.
I guess I'm looking back at the, you know, the May 1st proposal on the other proposal I spoke of, actually, that did comply with the new zoning. And then I actually go back a step further to when it first came before council. And I think the explanation I heard for the new zoning really hinged a lot on fronting and access to Souk Road. That was really sort of the justification for the zoning, was that we want to see lot consolidation, you know, land assembly to minimize the number of entry and egress points from Souk Road. And so that continually came up. And I think, you know, lost in that discussion was the fact that this doesn't front on Souk Road and that the access point is off Lindlar. And so I think that was a unique feature that I've had a hard time reconciling with this. The explanation behind the TGA zone is what is it meant to do? If it's really meant to eliminate the challenges with vehicle traffic coming in and out of Souk Road, how is it relevant in this particular case? And I guess the question I would have for staff is, when you look at the development that was approved under the zoning, and the setback between them and the neighboring properties behind them, if you look at each building in isolation, as Councillor Grove had mentioned earlier, they're not that dissimilar. And when you look at it as a whole, there's 2 buildings on that property. There's a whole variety of real estate reasons for that. You don't want this big monstrosity, but is it really that different when you look at it, you know, that way in terms of the distance? most of it looks to be very similar to me. And I don't know, maybe Yasmin or Desiree, you have it in front of you, but I understand the overall lot size is smaller, but the heavy weight given to the traffic access piece seems to me to be redundant. And I think the proponent has come to the table with all of the things that the Planning and Land Use Committee asked for. So I'm kind of torn here. I mean, I know 6 stories is a tough sell, but we've approved it down the road in a transit growth zone with a very similar scenario. In fact, with access right onto Soup Road. So is this really that different? And I believe I've had a number of meetings with them. They've certainly tried to purchase the land adjacent to them. We heard from one of the residents there this evening, whether he's for or against the proposal, I don't know, but he certainly indicated that the applicant tried to make every effort to purchase those lands. I don't know how much more we can ask of them. I mean, we heard at the outset that the city would prefer that we do a land assembly and consolidate there, but at what point can you force a private homeowner to sell or a private developer to purchase land? So it's a difficult one here because it's a tough fit, but by the same token, I'm confused still on the whole purpose of the TG zone if traffic's not the issue here.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm gonna permit it. Yes. You have to hit the mic.
Council Ward made a reference to didn't know whether or not I was for or against. Growth is inevitable. Managed growth such as you're putting forward is you're doing the very, very best you can for us now and the future. And we appreciate that. What I would like council to recognize is that right next door to us is a new development that was put up. It is 4 stories in height. That density already spills onto our street, Lynn Lark. There's not enough parking for them. Their visitors, their relatives, everybody, they start coming onto our street. I realize that the developer needs to maximize, potential in the lot that he's procured. He was unable to purchase any more additional lots so that he could, put together something that's slightly better. And what I would ask that council and the developer to consider, which a lot of us participated in the February discussions that he had open. We were more in favor of complying with what you had already approved next door, a 4-story type of configuration. But with the density of this new proposal, I just ask council to envision this, please. Yes, they are not going onto Soup Road, so that will make Soup Road potentially safer. But what I would like you all to envision is that there's 67 units with vehicles that are going to be an underground parking lot, and they're going to have access to Lynn Lark Road. And the developer mentioned it's going to be a left and right turn lane. But I ask you to envision all of us on our street currently, plus all of those additional residents, plus all of their vehicles looking to access Soup Road from a setback of about 15 meters from that area. How large is the queue going to be? And how much will it affect the current residents and the new residents of this new development? So I just ask that you consider what you've already approved. It is perhaps a modest consideration, and we're just concerned about the ambitiousness of the current proposal set before you, being these 6 stories. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much. Oh, yeah, sir, could you just drop your name and address, please? Please, yes, please. Just for the record.
Brian Robson, 3131 Linlark.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Ian.
Okay, I'll just wrap this up. Yeah, this has been a big struggle for me personally. I can see the benefits of, there's a big requirement for these 3-bedroom, apartments right now. I understand that. I saw the benefits of the potentially running the sewer lines all the way around Lidlark. I saw that as a great benefit to our citizens. I was having problems. This is too bad we don't have our little traffic model working yet, because you know, you could really take a look at that and see what that impact is. It's coming. We're very close to having this operational. So yeah, I'm sort of torn on this one myself. And I mean, there's a lot of compromise. And I guess just from a fairness point of view, I guess the way I looked at this too is, you know, about the same time when the formal presentations of this particular project were coming out, we were talking about the new zoning, the new zoning. And I mean, that wasn't for sure. No one knew if council was going to pass it or not. So I think the proponent here, you know, went ahead in good faith and did it to what they were proposing as a CD zoning. And then when we came up with our what's it called, TFA, is that what we call it now? TFA zoning? TGA, yeah, TGA zoning. It just seemed like, you know, like everything, our own precedents in the past from all my time on council is we've sort of grandfathered things that had, you know, the applications already in, or we were in discussions with. So just in fairness. So I guess that's everything that's weighing in my head right now. So I really struggled with this one myself personally too, because you know, if the TGA zoning was there, it's pretty simple what my decision would be, you know, if it existed. But the fact is we brought it in after, and I want to support staff here, but you know, it just seems like it's kind of not fair. I sort of put myself in their shoes and I thought, geez, well, how would I feel about this? Anyways, and I think they have compromised some things. They've everything as Council Ward has stated, everything that the committee had asked them to do, they've done it. So, because that's what's weighing in my head right now. Okay, so I don't see any other comments, questions. So the motion on the floor is for option 2, which is the proponent's proposal for CD zoning of the same, but and the other one is for the FGA zone, which is option 1, but the one that's on the table is for the CD zone. Correct? Thank you. And so I'm going to call the question now. All those in favor of the motion? Okay, and all those opposed? Okay, so that's Councillor Day. And thank you very much. So, yeah, we got you. So motion is passed. Okay, the next one's an odd one. Kelsey, form and character development permit for 85 Belmont. This is something, ladies and gentlemen, this is something that we normally don't make decisions on. So I'll let, who's doing this? You're not Kelsey.
I know I'm going to present on behalf of Ms. Fielden. This is a tricky one. It is unusual for staff to bring forward development permits for council to consider, or we're seeking some guidance in terms of having received a forming character development permit application for 85 Belmont 1901 Jerome. This application initially came a couple of years back to council for consideration of rezoning when it was initially proposed to be a 15-story tower that would fit within the Colwood Corners land use designation, where we're looking for high density, kind of establishing a presence for a downtown precinct. For many reasons, the 15-story proposal was not able to secure funding, and a revision to the proposal came down to a 6-story apartment building, 139 units still being able to be accommodated through the design presented. when completing the design guideline review against the policies within the official community plan that apply to the Colwood Corners land use designation, staff have encountered a number of challenges achieving compliance with what we consider to be key expectations of a building, a residential building in the Colwood Corners designation. The Colwood Corners designation speaks to having quite a strong character to a building, a presence, an essence to what a building is. And it's subject to this, very specific design guidelines that apply to multifamily buildings as well as the center's designation. One of those being having elevations or facades that have interest and distinction, having a pedestrian, a base, a ground floor that is pedestrian in scale, that it offers interest at the ground floor, and that has ground-oriented units, patios, or a warmth and welcoming kind of aspect to the ground floor elements. We have found ourselves unable to achieve modifications to many of the modifications that we would like to have seen to the original design. We do recognize it is an affordable housing project and funds are limited. However, as a staff, we are tasked with implementing the design guidelines of the OCP. And when we see a design that doesn't meet those design guidelines, we would like to give council the opportunity to provide direction as to whether this is an acceptable aesthetic for our downtown precinct and downtown corners land use designation. The report went into a lot more detail as to the initial submission and the minor changes that were proposed based on detailed staff feedback. And so we are just before you tonight asking for some guidance as to how you would like us to proceed. If you would like us to continue to work with the applicant, if you would like to just approve the development permit as proposed with no changes, or if you would like to pursue a different option. So we're just here seeking your direction.
Thank you very much. And I understand Ginny Holden, who's the Executive Director of Greater Victoria Housing Society, has something to say to us too. Go ahead, Ginny. You have to push the on button. Okay.
Hi, thanks so much, Your Worship and Council, for allowing us to address this important project to bring needed affordable rental homes to the city of Colwood. So for many of you, with the Greater Victoria Housing Society, we serve Greater Victoria. We have just under 1,000 units, very much focused on low and moderate income households, everything from seniors and families, persons with diverse abilities, newcomers, and working singles and couples. We've been serving the city of Colwood now through Colwood Lodge, which is the affordable housing site we're looking to replace for the last 40 years. But unfortunately, as this project came to the formal council, because the building has come to end of life, as the director of development noted, we had put in forward a 15-story mass timber building. Unfortunately, that went forward to funding with upper level governments at a time when lumber prices were really high, and it did not receive funding. So we spent the last couple of years redesigning the project so that we could still bring, right now the current lodge is about 50 units, almost triple the number of units on the site, but also serving those folks that are in most need, with, 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units. As the previous speaker talked about, those valuable larger units to go back into the community. So we're asking, a significant time and money has been spent and resources in helping to do. This is our second redesign on the project. And as you can imagine, as a nonprofit, operating in a very high cost environment these days, with high interest rates and construction costs, you know, money is not infinite. And we are really trying to bring forward a project that we can keep the rents low to meet that very desperate need in the community for these lower income units. Our hope is to get the noted approvals with the local government as quickly as possible. And that is actually for twofold. One is with, because as a nonprofit and the amount of time and different redesigns on this project, we're getting to a place where it starts to be a bit financially unfeasible for us to do many more significant redesigns. As we're really, really keen to get going on these units. The other piece that's very important is, from a timing perspective, is just announced today, BC Housing put forward their applications for the Community Housing Fund. And so that is a fund of which we're also building a project in Esquimalt, also a similar type, 140 units, large, from smaller to larger units. Where we hope that with all the approvals in place in a timely manner, that we can apply for this funding. And what this funding allows us to do is to bring forward units that are much deeper rents, much cheaper rents, and deeper affordability for those needed low income residents in the community. So we have a legacy of Colwood Lodge of providing low income rents, and we hope to do that in this new development. But to do that, we need to be able to get that deep funding from BC Housing, and they do tend to look more favorably on projects that are shovel ready. So we want to line this up for success. One of the other pieces I do want to note, especially with the discussion around climate, is that we're hoping to build at a minimum of a step 3 building here with very low carbon emissions. And really look at not doing any gas heating connection to be planned for this building. If we are successful in getting BC Housing funding, our hope is to do at a higher step, at a minimum of step 4, and a passive house construction, similar that we did at 33 Goldstream. And also we have another project in Townley and Saanich, and another one underway in Esquimalt. So our hope here is to build these very needed units in the community in a timely way. We want to be able to bring them to the community, as economically as possible so that we can keep those rents low. And we believe and I'll pass it over to our architects at Cascadia. We believe that we are building homes for the future that have low carbon, that are energy efficient, and that our residents can feel really proud of where we live with a spectacular design. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Peter, and I'm always going to get the name, and I asked him beforehand so I can make sure I can pronounce it correctly, Johan Kinich of Cascadia Architects.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. So thank you for the opportunity to just spend a few minutes here. And I guess my job is to convince you that this design is indeed actually excellent and appropriate. And now we think that we have responded to the design guidelines, and just recognizing that there are, guidelines and not, let's say, design rules, and they are like variations within. And just recognizing also that the building site is actually at the boundary of Colwood Corners. And actually, sorry, I should actually recognize that also Andy Gyrie, a project architect, is here on the team. And we together actually with Cascadia worked on the 330 Goldstream project. So again, that relevance of, being very familiar with Colwood and delivering really good housing buildings. And again, back to the site, it is at the boundary, obviously, with the goose along, the bottom of this page, and then facing Colwood Corner at the other direction. And because of the site configuration and being quite large, we placed the building so that we can actually respond to Jerome on one side, but also Belmont on the other side. And we've seen in the report the side elevation, which is probably not really a fair representation of what the building actually looks like and how people will actually perceive the design, which is these two renderings here in this view. So the building is shifted to really reduce the massing, how it's appearing. The roof is cantilevering over the entire massing and sloping actually to the inside and creating that kind of light elevated feel. But the real big shift and move is that the building is also bending in the middle where we have the main lobby entrance. You can just see the circle, the driveway access of Jerome. And that's really the main focus and entry to the building, with the large units facing along the sides. And those are the pronounced balconies that are expressed here. And then also shifting the building in its material and its color. So really responding on one side to the goose, on the other side to Colwood corners. The shift also allows for more light, and these balconies are for the large family units. They're over 24, or they're 24 units, like for 3 and 4 bedroom units, so for families. There's also extensive landscaping around the building. It's very rare that you have an affordable housing building, or actually, most buildings where you actually have a path where you can walk around the building. We have like over 40% of open site. All parking is underground. It's actually designed to the appropriate amount of parking, not over parking, not under parking. We have 84 stalls for 139 units. There are over 200 bike stalls in this building. We have a common space on the main floor with the playground. We have a common space for all the residents on the top floor with amazing views to the Olympic Peninsula. So really a space for everyone to enjoy those views. So it is a building where residents will come together, where neighbors can walk across from Jerome to Belmont. Ginny mentioned the performance of the building. There was one element in the report commenting on that the building is possibly not expressed enough, too flat. So like that veneer look of older buildings where windows are in the same plane of the cladding. But because we do have exterior cladding here, these windows are actually recessed. We have more definition. You can see material here at the larger rendering where we have the color bands with two tones, variations in between. So we have more than two materials, more than two colors. Is that band adds a lot of dynamic to the building, and this kind of dynamic flow we don't want to interrupt with breaking the roof as suggested. So I guess we're really at this point where we don't want to have a camel that's designed by committee that's supposed to be a horse, and we chip at, and where we just said, let's bring this to you for some guidance. And we think that we really responded and respect the design guidelines. We, like I said, took a different interpretation. And this is like an amazing project. Again, affordable housing, carbon free operation, high energy performance. Like, I mean, it's that type of housing that's so in demand and needed, and every community is thriving for. So just here for any comments and questions you might have. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm gonna go through the list here. Lots of speakers here. I'm gonna ask everybody to be clear and concise with their comments and questions, please. We're getting tight on time here. Councillor Day.
Thanks. I'm just hoping that you could remind me of a couple of your statistics. Are you, I believe you do rent geared to income. Is that correct?
Yes, we do. What we're hoping to with BC housing funding is that we will be able to do a higher percentage of rent geared to income units. Those types of units are very difficult to do nowadays, to build without high government grants and funding.
So what percentage of your apartments, as the project stands right now with the funding of some 488,000 from Colwood, what percentage of units would have rent geared to income now?
So currently in the Colwood Lodge, or do you mean in the future redesign or redevelopment? Are you asking
I'm
in the
asking-
current building?
No,
Okay.
in the new building, what percentage are you envisioning with the funding that you know of now?
So our hope, if we were not successful to get BC housing funding, and there is going to be a lot of demand for that funding across the province, so it's not a guaranteed, but as I said, it does increase our chances if we have a more shovel-ready project. If we were to get BC housing funding, we would have units at shelter rate. And how the funding is set up is that 20% of the units would be at shelter rate. And then it's 50% of units would be at sort of an RGI. So
what?
50% of the units would be at rent geared to income.
Rent geared to? That would
Yes,
be
and
about 50%.
50%, so 20% would be at shelter rates, and then 50% at rent geared to income, and then 30% at below market.
Perfect.
So that's only with BC housing funding that
Okay.
we can make those numbers work. So that's what we're hoping to be successful at with this
Okay.
project.
And the seniors who are currently living in the old building,
Yes.
will they be accommodated in the new building at a similar rate to what they're paying now?
So for our tenant relocation plan, so we will accommodate all the residents at units across our portfolio, which right now we stand at
So
about
they might
18
have to move
property.
out of Colwood.
Yes, because we have to bring the building down. It has come to the end of its life.
Yeah.
And no longer can be rehabilitated. And BC Housing has done that assessment as well. We're hoping that part of the reason we've lined this up in terms of timing, it will be at the same time as our Esquimalt project will be opening. So we'll be moving into better units at the same rate. They can have the option to move back as a first right of refusal back to Colwood if they choose.
And if they exercise that first right of refusal, is their rent the same as it was?
We take a tenant-based approach to that. So we work with the tenant to ask what they would prefer. In some cases, it's as you can see, it's a complicated process depending on what kind of funding that we get for this project. So what we want to do is to work with the tenant, ask what they can afford. What are they able to pay? Remember, again, we're a mission-driven organization, so this is our intent to take care of our current residents and make sure that they're, re-established or relocated to be able to pay the same rent. And then we provide them with options. And in some cases, they choose to move back. In some cases, they choose to move to other units or move in with family, and we help to compensate them around that. But we really take a person-centered approach.
And what percentage of your units would be accessible for people with different abilities?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do serve a population with diverse abilities. In this project, I believe we generally target around 5% of the units as accessible, but governments do change the dial on that. What we do find, especially at our Goldstream project, that was earmarked around 5% of the units. Any more than that, we actually have a hard time renting them. But we do try to make sure that all the common spaces and elevator spaces are accessible, and we can do those adaptations.
And what is the lifespan of the building?
Oh, that's a great question. We tried to build really great buildings in great locations. So we intend to build quite durably and with high quality, and again, really focus on the energy efficiency and the carbon. You know, we want to be able to build buildings that are great to run and sustainable for the long term, and that are, you know, reduce our operational costs so we can keep the rents low. So, you know, a minimum of, you know, 40 and 50 years. That's our hope in the long run. Yeah.
That seems short.
It does seem short, but in the building world, it's actually, you know, and our hope is to, you know, to make that go as long as possible. We just did a major retrofit of a building in Fairfield, 100 units for seniors and persons with disabilities, with funding from BC Housing. That was already about 45 years old. With that retrofit, we've extended that life another 40 years. So, you know,
The reason for the question is that the building that this is replacing is not that old.
it's not that old, but it has come to the end of its life. We've had, you know, building conditions assessments. We've worked with BC Housing. There are things that we would have to rehabilitate in that building, which we would need upper level government's assistance to do. And they have agreed, given the density of the site around the Ani project, and some of the accessibility and elevator, et cetera, and building envelope, that it is a better option to redevelop the building and also be able to almost triple the number of units on the site to serve a greater population.
Thank you.
Councillor Jensen?
I'll keep it tight, your worship. Thank you for all this. And I mean, the project in itself is exciting. It was exciting several years ago.
We
So
would have liked to have built it.
I don't take much from your sort of discussion around timelines, quite frankly, because if we did this the first time around, there'd probably be people living in there now. Okay, so you chose to go in a certain direction, and a fancy building that we were quite excited about, it didn't work out. We're back here again. I'm sure we've spent some money along the way as well. So, you know, again, so I mean, I don't have any opinion about that. So what I'm looking at here today is, you know, this group here did our part. We did our part, and we did it. Now we're here doing it a second time. So again, I don't feel like we should rush into this. And I also don't feel like, you know, it's too much to ask for this development, this new version, to fit with some of the guidelines that we've established as a community. This community is partnering in this development with some funding. We're also offsetting the amenities that we would normally expect from a development. So we're giving a lot. And what we're asking in return is some form and character type details, which in my read in this, it doesn't look like a whole lot to ask. And I'm quite sure that, you know, there's some middle ground to be found here, and so that we can move this along. But quite frankly, you know, I intend to support the staff's position on this. And clearly they don't dig their heels in like this very often, but they are on this particular occasion. Those are some of my thoughts. I guess it's more random than anything.
No, I appreciate that. And we would have built this building and we were pretty keen to do that. Unfortunately, you know, to be able to give the affordability, we needed to have that upper level government support. And we were told at that time that it was too expensive. In terms of addressing some of your other comments, you know, Peter and my director of development is on the phone from who might be able to explain some of the back and forth with staff a little bit more than I might be able to.
Yeah, no, if I may, like, just through the mayor, like, we really shared that frustration when the tower was not, financially supported by BC Housing. And we had meeting with the province was on board. We had, you know, mass timber, 15-story. The Greater Victoria Housing Society paid for an alternative solution to get that 15-story approved, again, with province support. And at the end, BC Housing decided against it. It was a big shock for the entire team because we were so stoked to do this here locally on the island. And again, carbon neutral building, actually with sequestering carbon. I don't want to get into much detail, but the frustration was entirely with us and the team. And yeah, here we are. You know, the building should be done by now. And, you know, we talk about design. And
Yeah, we do have, I think, a really solid track record in the office delivering high-end quality design in buildings. And I think maybe sometimes challenging. But I think with time, at the beginning, actually, for 330 Goldstream, we had very similar feedback, and it has received awards. The BC legislator was like, guided through the building as one of the poster child for development and housing. And so can I ask for some faith in our profession and our firm that we do the best? I mean, like I said, there are different opinions on guidelines, and I respect that entirely. And we had really good, solid discussions with staff. We made some revisions. Right. And I think, because of that, it has become better. But yeah, like we can't really fully redesign it. And a big one was like breaking up the roof line into these, ups and downs of architectural elements. And just driving here from Victoria this evening, I noticed a number of these buildings. And my professional opinion is not because of doing that, it's automatically creating better architecture. It's sometimes quite the opposite. So again, this is our design putting forward with compromises and changes, and that, we really believe it's an excellent building. Thank you. And it looks aesthetically appealing to me. So some of the nuances of your discussions with staff, we're not privy to completely, but, I did make a note to myself, just because this is affordable housing, we shouldn't accept some lesser standard. And that feels like a, no, absolutely not. So, and we don't have this affordable housing design in a drawer somewhere, say like, this will do. And here comes the luxury condo building, and now we can really show what we do. No, not at all. And again, 330 Goldstream, I think, is an excellent, recent, relevant example for that. But I mean, we're working on construction study now in the Niagara Valley, also for GVHS. And again, those are not even close to anything of the past when it comes to affordable housing or the term social housing, where it was really just stack boxes, building cheap, and put people in there. And it just caused so many problems. And I think we all learned a lot from that past. Yeah, thank you. And I do see the time, Your
Yes,
Worship.
I'm gonna ask for a motion to go past 10, please. Bear with me, maybe half an hour more here, folks, please. Councillor Ward, secondary, Councillor Grove, all in favor? Okay, Mr. Jensen, we got you this time, right?
And Your Worship, I just want to if I may, just address one little piece of Councillor Jensen's comments. I welcome you to tour any of the buildings that we've built over the last couple of years, and I think you'll be fully confirmed in the fact that we are building very high quality buildings, and we're not building cheaply. It is a tough math to make up as you're trying to build, low income and affordable units. Again, the development environment right now and the high interest rates are not our friends. But we build very high standard buildings. Our 33 Goldstream project was the first sustainable affordable housing in Canada. Our Townley project was the first step 4 building passive house building in British Columbia. We've constantly challenged, bringing up the game to lead the way on really good construction. And again, our hope here is not to challenge the environment that you've set out here for the look and design of these buildings. Our hope is always to build buildings that our residents can feel really proud to call home.
Thank you very much. Council Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd commend staff for bringing it forward to council. I know it's a unique situation. It's a little nuanced. So rather than just saying no and digging in your heels, as Councillor Jansen said, you recognize that there are some other factors at play here in terms of affordability and things like that. It's a shame that the original project was canceled. I mean, maybe if someone involved was married to the former CEO of BC Housing, wouldn't be in this state. But anyway, the cynic in me thinks that higher level politicians are all corrupt. But I think that in this case that my concerns, like Councillor Dare, with the residents there currently at Colwood Lodge, but I also recognize that building has to come down. Its life has expired. I have to put my trust and faith and hope in you that we'll find the right path for them. I think maybe we can help in that regard. So I would like at this point, it's affordable housing. I mean, if we're going to get caught up in roof lines and some things like that in a building that's going to be set back behind Colwood Corners and other things, then what are we doing? I mean, this is what we need. So I would push it forward personally and add the caveat that the city should be writing a letter of support to our MLA and cabinet minister you think could pull some strings, and to BC Housing to express that this is a critical piece of infrastructure in our community and we need it to house our residents and seniors in place. So I don't see any need to kick this can around much longer than it has been. I want to move it forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Grove. No. Oh.
Thank you, Your Worship, in abstention. The question, were you to be approved tonight, can you give me a timeline of when folks would get notice, et cetera?
So
Residents.
current residents?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've worked hard over the last year to we've held town hall Q&As with our residents every 3 months. So once we get a sense of the development timelines, our hope is to start, receive funding, which the call just opened, and then start moving to a plan towards construction, hopefully by next year. So we'll work closely with our residents. They are aware, again, this project's been on the docket now for the last couple of years. And we have that open dialogue with in person with our residents on an ongoing basis. So our hope is to start construction next year, but we do want to line it up with the opening of our Esquimalt property. So that
Main Street building,
yeah. So it's a little bit of a moving piece there that we want to have that project completed before really looking at relocating tenants.
Had their moving bags packed for a few years now.
Yes.
I think some of
And
those
I
people
wanted-
start to live with that.
And I want to just impress that, tenant relocations aren't simple. And you're rightly so to be concerned about them. But I want to impress that as a mission-driven nonprofit society who has the invested interests of our low to moderate income residents, we've done 2 of these already. We did this at Townley Lodge in Saanich. We've also done it again for our Esquimalt Lions Lodge, which is now under redevelopment. So we have some experience doing these larger tenant relocations. And it is a long process and we work, as I mentioned, kind of person to person on getting the right fit to get folks suitably housed.
Okay, I'd just like to pass on one comment I do speak to some of the residents there at 85 Belmont, and they're concerned that they're happy to live in a seniors focused concentration in the building. And I'm just, I know you're aware of that. So I just thought I'd mention that and reiterate that I think that their interest would be to help to try to maintain the sense of community they've established there. And they've been there for many years, some of them. So I think we've kind of touched on a lot of these things in various conversations, you and I, so I understand that you see it and have your own challenges from your perspective and trying to make those things work. Just want to reiterate that. Didn't know if there was some way within the building to have a senior as kind of a focus in one aspect and so on. I don't know if it's seniors don't want young kids running in the hallways. or what it is, but I think it's got to do with culture and community. And anyway, thank you very much for the proposal. And
Yes, thank you for those comments, Your Worship. Thank you.
So would anyone like to propose a recommendation, please, a motion? Councillor Ward, I'll let you start her off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would move that council advance this project with the caveat that we provide supporting letters to our MLA and to BC Housing to assist in whatever degree we can to obtain the funding that would make it more cost effective for some of the income challenged individuals in our community.
Can I get a seconder? Councillor Grove, discussion.
Your worship, if I may?
Yes,
Just for absolute clarity, I believe Councillor Ward's motion included the notion that DP 22-026 be approved with no changes. Thank you.
Okay, gotcha. Discussion, Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that I think it was the right thing to bring this forward to council. It is an issue and it is important, the form and character in a highly visible and important part of the city. And I would have been on your case if you did it without asking us. So I just wanted to say that just because we didn't make changes, which is reflective of the need, the extreme need in the community and the plight of the people who are living there, more so than any particular exterior finish could really make an impact on. And I still hope it looks fabulous.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, unanimous. Motion's carried. Excellent. Okay, so last item of new business. Who is it now? Is it? Oh, it is going to be Kelsey this time, and that's on 783 Qualtala. Qualtala? That's Qualta. It's Spanish. It's Spanish, right? Qualta. Qualtala. Oh, okay. It's not Japanese. Okay, over to you, Kelsey.
Thank you. So agenda item 9.5 is a reintroduction of the DVP application for 783 Cowalta. The application was deferred for more information at the July 10th council meeting. So the applicant is requesting a relaxation to the minimum width of an access strip for each panhandle lot from 6 meters to 5.33 on both proposed lots A and B. So staff are here tonight to provide additional information to the application. So proposed lots A and B will each have a 5.33 meter access. The applicant is proposing a shared driveway access of 6 meters, which meets the minimum required width for emergency vehicles and is accommodated almost entirely along proposed lot A to ensure mature trees located along proposed lot B are protected. This variance request is to support the applicant's preference of maintaining fee simple lots. So development notification signs have been posted on site per council policy, and postcards have been sent to neighbors within 75 meters advising of the variance reintroduction tonight. So council may wish to recommend to approve, defer, deny, or identify another option in regards to this variance request. The property owner is here tonight and also wishes to speak with some accompanying photos. Both myself and the approving officer are here to answer any and all questions you have regarding this request. Thank you, and the property owner will come up to finish.
Mr. Casey. You have to turn on your mic. Yeah, great.
There we go.
Perfect, you're good.
Awesome. Thanks. I'm Ross Casey. I'm the property owner. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for listening to me tonight. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. Because, you know, we were dealing with the other two variances that were approved or have been dealt with. So the only remaining issue is the development variance permit for approximately 24.2 inches narrower for each of the two lots. The reason, as Kelsey pointed out, was for the retention of the trees, which you can see on the left side, the Douglas firs. The driveway to the right is my neighbor's driveway. That's not my driveway. The driveway to the left is my driveway. And the center area where the sign is also, you know, where the servicing and driveway would be. My neighbor has been trespassing on my driveway for quite some time. And I've been amenable to it to try and be a good neighbor, and I haven't bothered him about it. I've said, you know, we'll share access, you know, or allow you to trespass, I guess is the actual terminology. So he was quite happy with that. He then proceeded to build a non-permitted workshop and garage partially on my property. So he's trespassing in multiple ways. There is no permits for that. He's currently taking it down. He offered me $10,000 to somehow allow him to leave it. I didn't really know how to deal with that. So I just said, look, we've got to do things the right way. So I'm trying to do things the right way. I've been in consultation with him. He's been very supportive of this all the way along until he realized he had to stop trespassing. And although he is making some progress in doing so, he has the driveway to the right. He has approximately 50 feet before it trespasses onto my property. So there's, excuse me, there's ample driveway for him. It also narrows down a little bit where it meets my property, but there is ample room for him to widen it in multiple places to get more parking if he chose to. I know that if I was trespassing on his property, I would have to stop doing that and create my own driveways. So the variance of the 24 inches on each of these is so we can have one driveway for the two lots, preserving those trees. And you know, I think the benefit is that it doesn't go into a strata, which for two lots is not practical. Also has some implications for costs for Colwood down the road. Also costs for affordability for me to build a strata road versus just straight fee simple. It's not as desirable for the end owners, whoever ends up owning those properties, if you know they're having a strata versus just reciprocal easements on a driveway. So simplicity for Colwood, simplicity for myself, simplicity also for the neighbors, who I don't really feel, even though I've described this to them, I don't really feel they understood that it's to their benefit, because if it's a strata road, it's going to be wider and then we're impacting the trees. So I don't think they fully grasped that. So my whole intention is to try and do things in a manner that's more beneficial for the street, for the neighbors around, and also for us and future owners. So I think that's really all I wanted to say, because I know there was some questions on clarifying, you know, is it a shared drive or is it a not shared? It's not a shared driveway. So I know the neighbor thinks it is, but it's not. He's got his own driveway. That picture right there is probably the best. Way up at the top, you sort of see a little shaded area at the top from the tree, and that's kind of where it starts to trespass. It's about 50 feet from the property line. So I'll leave it at that. If anybody has any questions, I'm here to try and answer as best I can. So
I was up your way last Friday just to take a look, and I was afraid to walk up the driveway because I thought someone was going to shoot me with a shotgun.
Oh yeah, well, the old Wild West.
Yeah. Council Ward. Oops, sorry. Something just happened here. Whoops. Yeah, I'm getting ejected here. Diego? Oh, are you fixing this right now? Thing just exploded in front of me.
Oh, it's working. Okay, thank you, Diego.
Thanks very much for your insight. To me, it's pretty straightforward. This isn't an all or nothing. It's an either or. Like you said, it's the variance, creates the lots in question in one means, or you can simply move ahead with, you've got fee simple if we grant the variance, or it's strata. And I see the upside here, the retention of the mature trees there, those Douglas firs makes sense. I think you've gone, from what I can tell, I mean, it's always third party view, but it seems to me you've made every effort to make this work. I understand that there's some neighbors with concerns, change is difficult, and I appreciate their perspective. I'm not trying to minimize that, but again, like I said, this is not an all or nothing. It's going to happen one way or the other. I think the granting the variance, the development variance permit here is the right move for you, for the city, and then ultimately probably for the future owners and even the neighbors. So I will be in support of the motion when it shows up.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can't.
I can speak now, but I can't see anybody. Oh, okay. Councilor Gay?
There I am. I found your pictures a little confusing. So could you just explain to me, the report said that the old fellow's cabin, which doesn't have a driveway of its own,
No, it has a full driveway.
it has a driveway.
Yeah, that's a
It's
picture
just
of it
that
right
the
there.
driveway is trespassing on your lot.
About 50 feet up from the property line. So he's got 50 feet of driveway.
Okay,
And then it narrows
Okay.
because there's a tree. So he would have enough to put a small car through perhaps, but maybe not a truck. And so that's where he trespasses, because he's been driving a truck for numerous years. So he would just drive it over my corner of my property and then access the rest of his driveway.
okay.
So my suggestion to him was, we would facilitate, and when my excavators were there, we would be happy to let him use them for a day to create a wider driveway for himself. But as I pointed out to him and his friend who was there trying to help him, I said, you actually don't need to do anything. You've got over 50 feet. And you've also got a front yard area, which you could go into if you wanted to make it wider at the base, like it's not like he's hemmed in. So he would have full access without spending a dime. He would have over 50 feet of driveway if you include the municipal boulevard of 25. So it's quite large. And so that's a picture of it there. So the actual picture starts right about where his driveway starts to encroach on mine. So that you can see how far he's got of his own driveway. And you can see to the left, he's put a structure there, but that could be removed and creating more parking for him if he chose, but he doesn't need to.
Okay.
So.
For sure. And you live in an area that's kind of the remnants of the old part of Colwood. And my interest is in seeing the environment remain intact. So I am in favor of saving the trees, and a little bit skinnier driveway is okay by me, except for the fact that once you've turned this into 4 lots instead of 1, there's the potential for more conflicts, and all of that. Those building envelopes are going to do a lot of destruction as well. Do you have anything you can add to that?
Well, first of all, because the lot borders 2 different sections of Qualta, the upper lot, there's only 1 new lot being created up top. On the other access, there's already an existing house on the 1 lot. Beside that will be a new lot, and then you would drive around the road quite a ways to get to the lower lot. So it's really only adding where we're talking about the variance. It's really only dealing with 2 lots. That's it. So there's no conflict between the new upper lot and these. They're not even, I mean, they back on, one of them backs on to one of the others, but that's
Right,
it.
yeah, but
And
they
they're-
have different.
And they're at a different
entrances.
elevation, different
Yeah,
entrance,
yeah,
different
for
road
sure.
access, everything. So it's really quite a minimal impact or change to the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Would someone care to make a motion then, please? Counselor Ward.
I will move to advance the development variance permit.
That's number 1. Option 1.
Option 1, yeah.
Seconder, Counselor Grove. Discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, unanimous, motion is carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time.
Hey, bylaws. Okay, bylaw number 1913, CD 33, the infamous 2350 Souk Road adoption. Can I get a motion? Okay, Councillor Jensen, seconder. Councillor Olson, discussion. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Consistent with every other time this proposal has been before me, I will be voting against it. I believe the entryway from Souk Road is unsafe. And I am standing up to the best of my ability for the community as I promised I would.
Okay, thank you very much. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? I knew you were going to Mr. Jensen. Councillor Jensen and Councillor Day opposed and and Grove, Councillor Grove, sorry, missed you. Okay, so the motion carries. Thank you. Okay, bylaw number 1979-01, financial plan amendment, first, second, and third reading. Can you quickly just remind us what that is again, Jen?
Certainly, Your Worship. There is a staff report before you that summarizes approximately a dozen changes to the current financial plan bylaw. As you know, this bylaw gives us the authority to spend. Many of these changes have been previously directed by council, and this is simply incorporating them. I would want to highlight 2 items. One, the Growing Communities grant. We have not yet made a decision on how we will utilize that grant. We do need to make that decision by December. This financial plan amendment proposes that we are transferring that grant into a reserve, which we will need to statutorily identify in a subsequent reserve bylaw amendment.
Okay.
So I did want to highlight that. Staff have previously brought backgrounder on how we could utilize that grant. We have not yet made a decision. We will schedule time this fall so that that decision can be made. Previous financial plan had an approximate $5 million budget for the Galloping Goose Overpass Bridge. We have pre-qualified a number of proponents. We are currently evaluating those proponents. All of the responses are over that $5 million budget, so there will be a subsequent amendment to support that spend. That is not reflected in this financial plan. Beyond that, please answer any questions that you may have. We do have this scheduled for first 3 readings tonight. Thank you.
Questions, Council? Seeing none, I'll make the motion just to move this seconder, Councillor Jensen. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Motion is approved. And lastly, sewer local area service engagement enlargement amendment bylaw, first and second, third reading. That's bylaw 1994, 1997, and 1998. Councillor Jensen moves, seconder. Councillor Day, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion's unanimous. Approved. Moved. Okay, Councillor Day moves, Chairman, second by Councillor Ward. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody, for your patience. And Councillor Jensen, I told you by 10:30. There you go, buddy.